Chapter 61, The Power of Destruction. The human individual named Mamiko Romanov has just disappeared. Now, what remains in the physical universe is the newborn demon princess who has received the 8 blessings, 8 kinds of divine grace, is clothed in 8 layers of glory, and controls the 8 layers of destruction. Kern's new favorite, Kern's youngest daughter. Kern gave him a new name, the god-favored one Renajin Jessica. The newly born princess of destruction slowly turned her eyes and looked at the despicable bastards in front of her. His features were still as delicate and beautiful as when he was a human, but his expression seemed to be fixed in his final state. It was a face filled with rage. But what was inconsistent with his entire face was that the corners of his mouth were stretched all the way to his ears, revealing a hideous and terrifying smile. Blood sacrifice to the blood god. Skull sacrifice to the skull throne. The one favored by God laughed wildly and roared out these words again. The sound completely ignored the surrounding vacuum environment and resounded in the ears of everyone in the great tomb of Nazarick like a thunderclap. What happened? Inz has been in a state of confusion since just now. In front, he let Pandora pretend to be himself and approach the enemy to negotiate, while he used complete innocence to eliminate all traces and followed quietly behind. After getting close, use the super-level magic Dark Sacrifice of Plenty to destroy the enemy's vitality. Everything went very smoothly, although the female knight's resistance was unexpectedly strong, and even a Black Goat Kid, a meat shield unit over level 90, was eliminated. But overall it's still within the plan. But after passing through the portal, Inz was really dumbfounded. My goodness, although the information collected through torture said that the other side was outer space. But before, Inz had always thought that it was a different world similar to outer space, and it turned out to be outer space. And what about that ridiculously large spaceship? Quit while you're ahead and withdraw quickly. Then wait a moment. How come the female knight who was about to be killed by Albedo suddenly transformed? And it was a completely new demonic transformation. That posture looks extremely bad, it feels like a world-class boss back then. Retreat. High-level teleport. When the situation gets bad, he runs away, collects intelligence, and wins the next battle. This is Inz's secret. So after discovering that the enemy ahead was likely a truly powerful one, Inz immediately gave the order to retreat. But its teleportation magic was indeed activated, but it just stood there without moving an inch. Inz was stunned for a moment, and wanted to cast magic again, but how could the great demon, who was favored by God, give him such a chance? The demon started to move, and rushed towards Inz like a speeding and violent car. A dozen Hanzos, who were guarding Inz as bodyguards, threw various flying items at the demon. These flying items from level 80 units are extremely powerful. Each one has a power comparable to that of a small artillery, and more than a dozen Hanzos are attacking at the same time. Various flying props such as kunao, throwing knives, meteor darts, etc. directly blocked all the ranges that the God-favored demon could escape. But the great demon favored by God would certainly not bother to dodge. All the flying props lost their power as soon as they approached him, and turned into piles of iron slag melted by high temperature and fell to the ground. Come on, fight, you coward! Hanzo's attack did not stop the great demon favored by God for even a second. He just rushed over and swung the demon flame power halberd in his hand horizontally with the force of thunder. 5 Hanzos were chopped into pieces, and another one with a tough life was hung on the head of the power halberd, burned by the demon flames, and let out a miserable wail. I don't know why Hanzo's screams could be heard even though it was clearly a vacuum. Another underground temple lord that had been following Inz as a guard immediately rushed over. It was a high-level undead of level 70, a commander-class undead wearing a once luxurious but now tattered purple robe, and a shining crown on its head. The lord of the underground temple was not an undead who was skilled in combat, but he charged forward without hesitation. But the god-favored demon did not even bother to look at it. With a casual wave of the sword in his left hand, the lord of the underground temple was shattered into pieces. But the delay between the two bought Inz some time. Critical strike mine. High-level teleport. Inz first set up a high-level elemental trap on the ground that would emit shockwaves simply by touching it, and then immediately teleport 200 meters away. Inz discovered that the teleportation restrictions here only restricted it to the world on the other side of the Great Tomb, but it was still possible to move around here. In short, use the servants to delay the opponent first, and then take the opportunity to retreat back to the original world with the Guardian. The environment and enemies here are completely unfamiliar, and fighting here is too disadvantageous. The god-favored demon did not attack Inz. Instead, the demon flame halberd in its hand directly struck the landmine left by Ins, causing a powerful elemental explosion. Hanzo, who was still in place, immediately took advantage of this opportunity and used skills such as Shadow Super Strengthening and Ultimate Poison to strengthen his weapons and launch an attack on the god-loved demon. But even though it was a very close distance, Hanzaman's long-range attacks still missed, but the attacks of several people who took the initiative to rush forward did hit the divine demon. The essence of life. Magic essence. Aiming to gather as much intelligence as possible about the enemy before retreating, Ins used a skill that allowed him to see the enemy's HP and MP. Then Ins saw that the HP of the god-loved demon began to drop slightly under the attacks of the critical mine and nearly 10 Hanzos. Ins was overjoyed, but he forced himself to calm down and stabilize his emotions immediately. But Ins was still happy. Although it seems that the HP and attack power are as high as those of a world-class boss. There are also cheating skills like arrow protection that are not vulnerable to ranged attacks, but melee attacks or traps can still cause damage to him. As long as you can deal damage, it proves that you can fight. The rest is to collect information step by step and try it out. Servants will stop us, guardians, please follow me and retreat. After coming to this conclusion, Ins moved to the front of the portal without hesitation, and then Ins was horrified to find that the god's favored demon had also teleported next to it, blocking the portal right in front of it. Don't run. Come on, fight. A huge brass wall, made from the blood of the humans who died in vain, directly covered the entire portal. It's not that the great demons of Khurn are incapable of using psychic sorcery, they just usually disdain to use these techniques. The great demon of God's favor who had sealed the portal swung his left-handed sword towards Ins from above with the power to split mountains and split seas. Out of contempt for cowards, the god-favored demon deliberately slowed down his attack speed. If this despicable coward could react, he would crush all its hopes and then destroy it. As for those who can't react to this obvious release of water, just crush them to death. Glorious Crimson Body. Ins finally reacted and cast a 10th tier defensive magic on himself, which was from the same series as Ins' most commonly used Radiant Emerald Body. In effect, Brilliant Emerald greatly increases resistance to attack damage and can invalidate the damage of a single attack attribute. The Glorious Crimson Body greatly enhances resistance to slashing damage and can invalidate damage from a slashing attribute. As a skeleton monster, Ins has high resistance to slash damage, but is weak to striking attributes, so he usually uses Radiant Emerald Body the most. But facing the powerful attack of the god-loved demon, Ins did not dare to take any chances, and quickly used the Glorious Crimson Body to counter the slash on himself. Boom! The rocks within a radius of 20 meters with Ins as the center were completely crushed into powder by the huge impact force, and then melted into deadly rock steam by the tremendous heat carried by the Khurn demon blade. Ins took no damage from the slash, and his magic was effective against this great demon favored by God, but the subsequent heat attack caused Ins' health to begin to drop visibly. At this time, Shaltir and Albedo arrived and used their strongest forces to bombard the god's favored demon, but the attacks that were usually enough to easily destroy the city wall only made the god's favored demon's body shake. From Ins' perspective, the health of the god-loved demon only dropped a little. Upward transmission. With Shaltir and Albedo holding him back, Ins immediately moved to the rear of the battlefield, and without hesitation used his most powerful attack magic, a 10th tier space-based attack magic. The most powerful triple magic, immediate destruction. The powerful attack with spatial attributes only left a scratch on the magnificent brass wall. Although the scratch was 2 inches deep, it was too insignificant compared to the huge wall that was several meters thick. Chapter 62. The Demon Army comes to the world. After the loss of the world-class item map of the mountains and rivers, the Great Tomb of Nazarick placed the human empire's forces on the highest level of alert. In this raid, the Great Tomb of Nazarick can be said to have sent out all its elite troops. Now follow Ins and rush forward quickly. The guardians who arrived here were Aura, Shaltir, Albedo, and Cositus. Mare and Sebastian stayed on the other side of the portal. Among the high-level servants, those above level 90 are the newly summoned Black Goat Kid. Aura's pet the Golden Dragon of Fire and the Green Dragon of Acid obtained by Krypton Gold. There are also Corpse Guardians whose levels are close to level 90. There are hundreds of units remaining that are above level 80, and hundreds more that are above level 60. Among them, the undead and demons have a high resistance to vacuum environment, and others can use magic to create the ability to travel in a vacuum, but it will definitely have a certain impact on their performance. Ins really didn't want to start a battle here against an enemy who was most likely a world-class boss. Although I don't want to reveal my cards now, there is no other way. Aura uses allure of the nation. Ins used communication magic to send the information only to Aura. The stunning appearance is a high-slit cheongsam embroidered with golden dragons. As a world-class prop, its effect is the compulsory mental control of supermodel level, which can ignore resistance and directly control level 100 NPCs or even boss-level units. Although theoretically it is impossible for a beautiful woman to control a world-class boss, it is still necessary to try. Aura quickly changed her clothes. This was the first time that Aura, who usually dressed like a boy, wore such revealing clothes. Her beautiful legs were completely exposed, which made her feel a little shy. But there was no time to worry about that now. Aura used forced mental control on the god-favored demon. The powerful charm from the world-class prop stunned the god-loving demon, and his pupils, which were spewing anger, became blurred for a moment. But soon after, the sound of a loud war drum rang in the ears of the great demon favored by God. The war drum coming from the highest heaven instantly sobered him up, and made the blood in his body boil in a physical sense because of anger. The land beneath the feet of the god-favored demon was transformed into flowing lava under the influence of the high temperature emitted by him. The great demon favored by God was very angry, even angrier than before. He was determined to tear into pieces the scum who dared to blaspheme the battle. That bastard was not even worthy of being offered to the blood god. The great demon of God moved again, wielding a power halberd burning with monstrous demonic flames and rushing towards Aura. Cocytus's guards, the Snow Maidens, tried to use ice magic to block the steps of the great demon of God. But it was useless. The Snow Maiden's frost not only failed to stop the great demon favored by the gods, but also formed a large amount of water vapor that blocked the vision due to contact with the high temperature. On the other side, Cocytus took out the god-slaying sword, spewed out extremely cold spiritual energy, and intercepted the god-loving demon in front of him. Facing this enemy who showed his warrior spirit, the great demon of God felt delighted. He blocked Shalter's attack skill and showed respect to the enemy. The great demon favored by God casually drew a circle of fire with a radius of 200 meters, surrounding himself and Cocytus. The sacred duel does not allow any other rubbish to disturb it. I am the guardian of the 5th level of the great tomb of Nazarick created by the supreme warrior Gokhan. My name is Cocytus. Because of the extremely cold aura spread by Cocytus, the sound temporarily had a carrier and was able to make sound temporarily. I am the blood god's gift, the newborn great demon. I can feel that you are different from those bastards. You have courage, and your head deserves to be decorated on the blood god's skull throne. Really? I'm really grateful to be recognized by such a strong person. Cocytus held the god-slaying sword high above his head with both hands, while his other 2 arms took out the giant sword and the mace respectively. Cocytus is one of the few justice-oriented units in the Great Tomb of Nazarick. It looks like a giant insect that can walk upright, a mixture of a mantis and an ant. It is 250 centimeters tall and light blue in color. Cocytus' design and personality are based on warriors, so it is one of the few units in the Great Tomb that is respected by the blood god. Akala strikes the Kuligara sword. Cocytus used his strongest attack without hesitation, and the corners of the mouth of the god-favored demon cracked further, and scarlet blood flames spurted out from his throat, melting into the giant sword and power halberd, making the kern flames on them burn even more vigorously. Then the great demon favored by God moved. Use strength to counter strength, and use force to overcome force. He deliberately chose a fighting style without any skills and started a pure fight with Cocytus. A hearty exhilaration, blood for blood. The strongest slash launched by Cocytus was forcibly blocked by the god-favored demon with a magic flame-powered halberd. Then it waved its other 2 hands to block the slash of the giant sword, but the blood flame attached to it melted its shell. Cocytus's shell has high fire resistance, but it is obviously unable to stop Kern's demonic flames. Cocytus roared in pain and activated the healing items on his body to heal himself. At the same time, he attacked the god-favored demon again without hesitation. Ha 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 ha. The great demon favored by God laughed heartily, and the 2 sides started fighting each other. Because of the blocking of the flame wall in the tomb, everyone had no idea what was happening inside. Buttons, who could see the panel, knew that he saw with his own eyes that Cocytus's health was dropping rapidly. Albedo, hurry up. Albedo is the steward of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, and usually carries a world-class item called Hell's Abyss. This item looks like a scepter and can also be transformed into other weapons. Although its lethality is not as good as those artifact-level items that are specialized for attack, its destructive power on objects is overwhelmingly strong in the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Now, taking advantage of the time gained by Cocytus, Albedo was continuously bombarding the brass wall with the abyss of hell. In a short period of time, half of the brass wall had been destroyed. At this time, the flames dissipated, and the god-favored demon walked out with a proud attitude. But he still felt it was a pity. After killing Cocytus, the body disappeared directly, just like the other bastards, and he did not get the head. The dissatisfied god-favored demon looked at Ins and the others. He hoped that there would be more tough guys like the one just now, so that the game would be more interesting. Ins did not dare to stop attacking Albedo even for a moment, while the other servants and guardians kept a vigilant eye on the god's favored demon, ready to respond to his attacks at any time. Just as the two sides were confronting each other, a brilliant beam of light descended from the sky, plowing the entire land and paying special attention to the god-favored demon. When the spear of light descended, Ins almost instinctively used teleportation magic to send himself to the farthest place from the battlefield, but he was still shocked by the terrifying power he had never seen before. Wherever the spear of light passed, reports of the deaths of high-ranking servants from the great tomb of Nazarick filled the screen. With such terrible power, there is no way that the demon could survive. Just as Ins was thinking this, he heard a familiar roar from the smoke produced by the bombardment of the light spear. Then the sky opened up. Another even more creepy voice rang out. "Welcome, new sisters, let us spread the blood god's eightfold glory together." On this day, the blood god Cain, regardless of the rules of the great game, sent the great daemon exile Scarbrand into the mortal world with 88 demon legions to start a massacre. Chapter 63. Chaos Demon Realm. In Ins's sight, a huge wound appeared in the sky. Ins couldn't be sure of the exact size of the wound. There was no suitable reference for the crack in the sky, but it must be very large. Very, very large. The bloody crack directly spanned most of the sky. The creepy laughter, roars and sounds of war drums ignored the vacuum environment and the limitations of distance, and showed their existence wantonly. A voice filled with endless blood and infinite terror rang out from the sky and from the surging crack. Then, a pair of scarlet claws equipped with brass gauntlets, larger than a mountain, stretched out from the crack, grabbed both sides of the crack, and tore it open with force. A torrent of blood poured down from the ethereal heavens into the world. In the 30k era, the black stone array was still intact, and there was still a thick curtain between the warp and the real universe, making it difficult for the power of the chaos gods to directly affect the physical universe. But being difficult to influence also means that it can be influenced. As long as the chaos gods of the supreme heaven are willing to pay enough, they can still directly intervene in the real universe. Here, Cain used his divine power to open a gap between the warp and the real world, and the exile Scarbrand couldn't wait to rush out of this gap. As the most beloved demon of the blood god Cain, and now a poor guy who was betrayed by Tzeentch and exiled, he wants to make progress so much. After rushing out of the rift, Scarbrand adjusted his body, resizing his terrifying demonic body to 8 meters in size. "Welcome, new sisters, let us spread the blood god's eightfold glory together." Scarbrand laughed wildly and rushed towards the warship in the air, followed by a huge legion of 88 demons. It is born from blood and brings endless destruction. At this moment, Ins inexplicably thought of the legendary world-class item that could summon demons infinitely until it covered the sky. Because right now, it discovered that the sky was really covered by a red army of demons. Ha 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 ha, praise the blood god. Glory to Cain. The laughter of the god-favored demon rang out in the dust raised by the bombardment of the light spears. How can it be? How could he not die under such a powerful attack? Ins was shocked to see the horrible monster emerging from the dust. There was a raging demonic flame burning on his body, but his health points not only did not decrease, but instead recovered to their original state. At this time, Ins found that the ground beneath his feet was suddenly oozing blood, and the ordinary mountains in the distance suddenly erupted violently like volcanoes, and as if it was contagious, the surrounding mountains suddenly became active volcanoes. The blood god Cain actually wants to drag this entire planet into his chaos realm. In the sky, the crew members of the 4 remaining spaceships of the human empire looked at the scene in horror. Because most of the crew had left the spacecraft and 2 spacecraft were still on the ground on standby, their reaction was much slower, so that they only just completed the orbital bombardment of the ground. Then they saw the demonic realm unfold and the nearly endless army of demons. In the 30th century, due to the Emperor's intentional blockade of information, the people of the Empire, including the Primarch, knew very little about chaos demons. Even if they encountered demons during their warp voyages, they only regarded them as dangerous warp creatures. This was originally a way to deal with chaos. After all, for humans, when you know chaos, chaos also knows you. Remaining ignorant of chaos and replacing blind faith with rationality and science is an effective way to fight chaos. The premise is that chaos does not come directly. This protective measure of the Emperor once completely failed in another official world line. It was also because of his blockade of information that the Primarchs were corrupted by the warp one by one, triggering the Horus heresy that interrupted the hope of human revival. For the next 10,000 years, the human empire fell into a state of sustainable destruction. The tortured human beings have to make huge sacrifices every day in order to continue human civilization. And now, fortunately, the Emperor still has a chance, and humanity still has a chance. Because of a sudden change, the timeline of Chaos' direct interference with the present world has been greatly advanced. Chaos' original plans have been disrupted, and everything has new possibilities. Of course, this is not a good thing for the Imperial Army now. They really don't know what the warp demons are and lack knowledge of these great enemies of humanity. The first to respond was the destroyer USS Agaro. Because he was recently ostracized, Father Otto moved his laboratory back to the destroyer Agaro, which also allowed him to avoid the previous bloody massacre. Now Father Otto has urgently taken control of the destroyer Agaro. Although he doesn't know what these things are, they are definitely very bad. In addition to activating the shield, Father Otto also began to mobilize all available weapons to shoot at the demon army. But he was still too slow. Some of Kern's fleshhounds and bloodletters had already teleported to the Agaro. Those who remained on the spaceship were the young men from Agaro. They had gone through several days of brutal war and had strengthened their beliefs. Even when facing a completely unknown enemy, they immediately began to fight back. The resistance of just a handful of mortals was unable to stop the onslaught of the horrific demons. The Blood Reapers are vampires who have proven their worth and existence. They are more powerful, more deadly, and have received more blessings from the Blood God. Now these bloodthirsty red-skinned lunatics rushed to the front waving the charred serrated swords in their hands. The automatic rifles, which were far more powerful than those in the 2K era and the early 3K era, still had incredible miss-target phenomena when firing at close range. Even if some bullets successfully hit the target, these bullets that can easily penetrate homogeneous steel plates will only create a crater with burning body fluids. The Blood Reaper that was shot laughed out loud and continued to attack completely unaffected. The first wave of warriors who blocked their way were killed by their serrated swords before they could react. Their souls were harvested and offered to Kern, and their blood became food for the Blood Reapers, making them more determined to fight and stronger. Only a pile of dried shells were left on the spot. The soldiers behind used cover to defend and threw grenades to block the enemy, but it also didn't have much effect. One warrior discovered that he could use close combat to fight these monsters, but before he could pass on the idea he was devoured by the flesh hounds that followed behind him. The flesh hound is a demon that looks like a big red dog with horns. It is a size larger than the largest dog, and has no hair on its explosively muscular body, but is covered with solid red scales. Flesh hounds are natural hunters, and few beings can escape their pursuit. In the narrow cabin, these agile and cruel hunters can cause greater damage to the soldiers. Agaro's militia rose up to resist, but the gap in strength was too great, and their bravery and tenacity were rewarded with heads that the Kern army regarded as worthy of collection. Soon the defenses on the Agaro were breached, and the demons marched straight into the command room. Father Otto raised his mechanical axe inside. "Oh my goodness, I'm almost done with my first paper." A roar came from Father Otto's electronic sound synthesizer, and under the cover of the mechanical servants, he fought with the demon army. A moment later, Father Otto, who was in a state of decline, gave the final order to the Agaro. Crash into the ground that was already covered with demonic troops. Scarbrand reunited with the great demon Renajan Jessica, who was favored by God. Scarbrand was very fond of this sister who brought a new war to the Blood God. Although the forces of the Great Tomb suffered heavy casualties in the previous bombing, Scarbrand and the Great Demon of God still found 8 survivors, including Shaltir in bright red armor. In order to prevent them from disappearing directly after death, this time Scarbrand imprisoned their souls in their bodies, and then pierced them into the ground with blood spears, arranging them according to the Chaos Octagon. Scarbrand will hold a ceremony here to help the Great Blood God speed up the digestion of the planet. Then a powerful magic hit him on the head, knocking him to the ground. My plan. The arcane peeper Eveliana rushed out of the portal in his true form as the Lord of Change, and immediately gave Scarbrand a hard blow. Now his 7 eyes that can see the truth are filled with anger. His ingenious plan and the grand changes that were about to take place were destroyed by the Damkern demon before they even began. He wanted to say something else, but then he stopped. He heard the voice of the Lord of Change, and immediately used himself as a coordinate to provide guidance from the physical universe to the Lord of Change, Tzeentch. A new, earth-shaking portal has been opened in this desolate world. It was an ancient door with a blue background, shining with ever-changing light, and it seemed to contain endless knowledge and infinite secrets. A Lord of Change came out holding a scepter with a thick book on it, and countless strange demons such as treachery, fire demons, flying sharks, etc. flew out from beside the Lord of Change. If there is any difference between this Thousand Changes Demon Lord and other Thousand Changes Demon Lords, the most obvious thing is that he has two heads. A glimpse into the future. A look back to the past. His name is Carlos the Fateweaver. He is the chief demon under Tzeentch. Chapter 64, Fateweaver vs. Exile. Following Father Otto's final order, the destroyer Aggro started its engine at maximum power and rushed towards the demon army that had already covered the ground. At this time, Scarbrand also climbed up from the ground. He first saw the annoying big bird Arcane Peeper Evelyaner. Then he saw the door opened by the great god Tzeentch, and saw Carlos the Fateweaver walking out of it, as well as the endless Tzeentch demon army. Kern's encroachment on the planet ceased. No, it didn't stop, it was replaced. All kinds of strange things grew out of the blood that was originally gushing out. Some of the blood mutated into various substances, some were still liquids, such as petroleum, and some were solid, gaseous, and everything in between. The planet's gravity coefficient and even the physical constants above it began to show slight changes. Tzeentch. A roar filled with anger sounded from the highest heaven. The power from the blood god prevailed once again. Ha 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 ha, change is a good thing. The voice of the Lord of Change came from the heaven of change in the highest heaven. The power of change was strengthened, and the two sides pulled each other, and finally maintained a fragile balance. The Tzeentch and Kern demon armies below have already started a fierce fight. As for the forces in the Great Tomb of Nazarick, who the hell has time to care about the Great Tomb now? 8 people, including Shaltir, were stuck into the ground. Ins hid behind a huge rock and trembled. The half-crippled Albedo was flying in the air, dodging the various powerful attacks thrown at each other, while anxiously searching for its supreme being. It has not been shot down yet, it is really the god of luck that is blind. For the remaining large tomb units, it makes no difference whether they are level 60 or level 90 now. No matter who is so blind as to dare to show up, he will be killed. There were also powerful units from the tomb running out from the other side of the portal. For example, Mare is now standing next to the portal holding a staff. It had always pretended to be weak and timid, but this time it was really scared and cried. It has always been proud of its strongest wide-area magic attack in the Great Tomb of Nazarick, but now it has discovered that many stray arrows on the battlefield are more terrifying than its most powerful magic. As a butler, the meticulous Sebastian resolutely rushed into the group of demons, and was soon overwhelmed by the huge group of demons, and his life or death was unknown. Among the duels between these demons, the most intense one was the battle between Scarbrand and Carlos the Fateweaver. After Carlos appeared, he just casually hooked his finger, and the aggro, which was originally rushing to the other side of the battlefield, changed its direction due to some small coincidences and hit Scarbrand directly. And now, ever since Tzeentch's forces entered the scene, Scarbrand, who has received endless blessings from the blood god, is extremely happy. He did not dodge or evade, but chose to enlarge his body. The 800-meter-tall Scarbrand stood up from the ground, swung his 2 axes and directly attacked the aggro. With a huge roar and explosion, the aggro was chopped into a pile of scrap metal by Scarbrand. "You're next." Scarbrand shrank his body back to its original size and lunged at Carlos with a roar. However, Carlos just flicked his fingers casually again, and the macro cannons and light spears on the remaining 3 spaceships of the human empire opened fire at the same time due to various coincidences of fate, and the target was exactly Scarbrand. However, how can these stop the furious fragments of the blood god? Scarbrand ignored the attacks and rushed towards Carlos. Then he found that no matter how fast he charged, the distance between him and Carlos did not change at all. Just like the name of Carlos the Fateweaver, he is the most powerful demon wizard below Tzeentch, and he can easily weave the fate of others. He can peer into the future, and he can look back into the past. He can even discover some knowledge that even the great god Tzeentch does not know. "You know nothing about the present." Scarbrand roared. "He is not a tiny mortal, nor a low-level demon with little intelligence. How can he be fooled by Tzeentch's tricks? Although I don't know the reason. But in short, hit him. Just hit him hard. There is nothing that cannot be solved with an axe. If there is, just hit it until the problem is solved. Scarbrand fully utilized his advantage as a Daedric Prince of Khurn. First, temporarily seal the highly intelligent brain. Then control the body with a powerful and unyielding spirit and drive it with endless rage. Scarbrand instinctively swung the first axe, then the second axe, followed by the third axe, the fourth axe, the 8888th axe. Scarbrand's attacks were getting faster and faster. Although it seemed that the distance between him and Carlos had not changed, in fact Scarbrand was getting closer to Carlos centimeter by centimeter. Finally, Scarbrand was about to get in front of Carlos, and the battle axe in his hand would soon chop off Carlos's annoying bird face. At this time, Carlos gave up direct control over Scarbrand's fate, and his hand holding the scepter slammed to the ground. 999 kinds of magic were cast at the same time, flames rose, ice froze, acid evaporated, and darkness squirmed. All of a sudden, various kinds of magic appeared in front of Carlos, bringing a dreamlike beauty, and then 999 attacks attacked Scarbrand. The method adopted by Scarbrand was to use the power of Khurn to strengthen the armor and skin on his body. He took Carlos' attack head-on without dodging and evading. Scarbrand laughed wildly, ignoring the broken breastplate in front of him, and swung the huge axe in his right hand at Carlos from top to bottom. Carlos did not choose to use magic this time. He crossed the scepter in his hand and collided with Scarbrand without hesitation. Just because the Lords of Change prefer to use magic doesn't mean they can't smash their enemies' heads in close combat. Boom! The direct fight between the two great demons produced a blindingly strong white light, and the huge shock wave it created directly crushed all the demons within a diameter of several hundred meters around them. Carlos's scepter blocked Scarbrand's axe, just one axe. Scarbrand raised his left hand high, then dropped it heavily. Like a mountain collapsing, it smashed hard on Carlos's scepter. No hit. Carlos, who was fighting with Scarbrand, turned into an illusion at some point, and the real Carlos appeared in front of the portal connecting the Milky Way and the other world. He tried to use magic to take the portal away directly, but found that his magic was ineffective. After all, if it could be taken away or analyzed directly, Tzeentch would have done it long ago, and Khurn would not have needed to pull the entire planet into the Chaos Realm with such great fanfare. A power halberd burning with Khurn's flames was thrown over and pierced Carlos's wing. Scarbrand raised his axe from the other side to attack Carlos, but Carlos blocked all of it. But on the other side, the newly born Khurn princess severely injured Carlos with the sword blessed by the blood god. This is the future scene that Carlos saw. At the same time, he searched the past and discovered the movement trajectory of the princess of Khurn, and deduced the most likely location for him to throw the power halberd. Then Carlos moved to the side, and the demon flame power halberd almost brushed past his beak and flew towards Scarbrand. Scarbrand swung his axe to block the magic flame power halberd. At this time, Yvel appeared from the side, the arcane tome shone brightly, and the divine power from Tzeentch knocked Scarbrand away. Ha ha ha, everything is going as planned. Carlos laughed lowly. Chapter 65. The Other Side. Governor Jim had originally watched In's peace proposal with the intention of watching the fun. As a de facto militia captain, and now a militia captain in the process of major repair, Governor Jim does not have much say in military matters. The reason why he came to consult me was more out of respect for his comrades and the status of the planet's governor. Since Colonel Mimiko and Barn had already made their decision, there was naturally no need for him to go against the grain. And he also knew that the Empire would never forgive these aliens who harmed humanity. The current peace talks are just to wait for the arrival of reinforcements so that we can completely wipe out these scum in one fell swoop. But Jim had not expected that Ins would launch a surprise attack under the pretext of peace talks. Although the pure power of super-level magic is far inferior to the Empire's insane firepower, some of the magic with special effects can still cause serious damage to the human Empire under certain specific circumstances. Under In's super-level magic attack, the previous team of the human Empire was almost wiped out. The only ones left were officers like Jim who were equipped with personal force field generators, except for those who had superb reaction and avoided it in time, or those who were extremely lucky and just managed to escape. However, the price of a personal force field generator is very high. Even though it is the 30k era now, the Imperial Army or the Mortal Auxiliary Army is much more powerful than the Astra Militarum in 40k, and only a very small number of officers are likely to be equipped with a force field generator. After the catastrophe, apart from the barbarian cavalry who followed Mimiko in the final charge, the remaining people could not cause any waves at all. Although they also resisted bravely, they were almost quickly overwhelmed by the high-level combat servants of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Some of the remaining troops of the Cillian theocracy tried to resist. For example, Jim saw a knight stopping the alien army of Nazarick. He knew that knight. This knight once taught Mimiko martial arts, and was appreciated by the colonel, who directly gave him 5,000 throne coins. That was a huge sum of money for the sparsely populated planet of Agaro, and the knight spent all the money on the wandering trader Jack. He spent a considerable premium to replace his helmet and breastplate with carapace, and also bought a crudely made heavy logging gun. Now he was holding a heavy logging rifle and roaring as he fired at the monster army in the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Jim could see that his body was shaking, and his face was covered with saliva, tears, and snot. He must be very scared. But I still mustered up the courage to stand up. But the next moment, a ninja-like monster that lurked behind him killed him. A ninja monster named Hanzo cut off his head, emptied the contents on the battlefield, and made a horrifying human head balloon. There was no respect for the warriors shown in the process. Jim wanted to rescue but had no way to do so. He could only stand with Barn, who happened to be close to him, fighting and retreating, barely protecting himself. Mimiko's charge was heroic and fearless, and all the monsters that stood in her way were killed instantly. However, the number of barbarian cavalrymen following her was decreasing. Thanks to Mimiko, the pressure on Jim's side was temporarily reduced, allowing him to run into a shelter with Barn and continue fighting the enemies in the Great Tomb of Nazarick with the help of the shelter. Jim found Amelia's body in the bunker. Only her upper body was left. Amelia was still holding the axe in her hand, her lifeless eyes wide open, staring at the empty space. Jim felt his heart was broken, as if something had dug his heart out, but he still shot and attacked without hesitation. He had no time to mourn the loss of his daughter. He doesn't need to mourn anymore. Jim is ready to destroy as many aliens and blasphemies as possible before he dies, and then he will go to another world to meet Amelia. And the Empire of Man. The Empire will not forget any blood debt of the aliens. Jim shot, waved his weapon, and roared. Until he realized that he had emptied all his magazines, and his right hand that was wielding the chainsword had been broken at some point, with blood flowing out of his mouth. Ha ha ha! Are you going to die? Jim's vision was almost dark, and he knew by instinct that Barn was still resisting. Space Marines are just more powerful than ordinary people like them. Jim, who had almost exhausted his last bit of strength, closed his eyes and prepared to face his own death. Then he found that the pressure on his side suddenly disappeared. Jim took out a tube of combat stimulant from his body, injected himself with it, and then gasped violently for a while before he barely regained some strength. At this time, he discovered that most of the Nazarick Great Tomb troops that had massacred the remaining survivors had disappeared. The remaining part was rushing towards the church area, while others, including the troops that had besieged them before, were trying to intercept a huge bird-shaped monster. However, the monsters that had previously given the Empire's troops a headache with their powerful individual combat capabilities were powerless in front of the bird-shaped monster. Jim watched as the bird-like monster shouted, "This is going to be bad," as it destroyed all the defenses of the Great Tomb of Nazarick and rushed to the cathedral area. What's going on? Jim didn't understand what was going on, but it seemed that those blasphemous things didn't have the energy to take care of them for the time being. So what to do now? Why don't you find a place to hide first? There is a spaceship stationed on the other side of the portal. Those blasphemous creatures can just run to the other side and wait to be eaten by all the spears and wiped out. It is best to find a place to hide now to avoid the enemy's remnants who will run back soon. Just as Jim was thinking this, he discovered another force coming from a distance. Smoke and dust were billowing, and he didn't know where his telescope had fallen, and for a moment he didn't know what kind of unit it was. But fortunately, the team soon displayed their identification flags. This was the exploration team led by the merchant hunter Jack, who was ambushed yesterday and suffered heavy losses. I didn't expect that I would get back just in time. Jim wanted to remind Jack and the others not to get any closer. But even though the high-level combat servants of Nazarick were moving towards the cathedral area, the relatively weaker guards of Nazarick were still clearing out the survivors. Even Barn, a space marine, is unable to send messages directly to Jack and the others after a fierce battle. Finally, I watched Jack and the others arrive at the camp. Among them, Jack, who was theoretically seriously injured, was driving a centaur assault vehicle, rushing faster than anyone else. When he arrived at the camp, Jack knew that he might be completely doomed. Completely ignoring Adjutant Chen's dissuasion, Jack put on a space helmet with one hand, and then drove the centaur assault vehicle directly into the church's portal. Chapter 66, Joy is Coming. After rushing through the portal, Jack didn't care about the discomfort of suddenly being in a vacuum environment, and first went to find his spaceship. The place where the spaceship was originally docked is gone, replaced by a group of twisted monsters fighting each other. Fortunately, Jack breathed a sigh of relief. The spaceship was not here, it just flew up. Fortunately, this is my last property. If I lose it, I will be finished. Then Jack saw his lucky spaceship falling from the sky to the earth in a beautiful spin, causing a magnificent explosion, killing a large number of twisted monsters. That's my fucking boat. Jack watched his last property disappear before his eyes and felt like his heart was about to stop beating. The fatigue and serious injuries of the past few days, coupled with a moment of emotional excitement, caused Jack to faint. Adjutant Chen, who had been following Jack, quickly checked Jack's vital signs. Fortunately, Jack is still alive. At this time, Adjutant Chen was carefully observing the surrounding environment while trying to drive the assault vehicle back to the portal. It's too dangerous here, let's hide for a while. Right next to the portal stood a dark-skinned, pointy-eared little girl crying and hugging a staff. No, that person was wearing women's clothes, but his gender should be male. Although he looked harmless, Adjutant Chen knew that this person was one of the cotters following the Sorceress Kingdom. And now, this monster, who had killed countless humans, stood next to the portal and cried helplessly. This creates a strange sense of absurdity, but it is surprisingly reasonable for the current doomsday-like scene. As the adjutant of a traveling merchant, Chen had seen many big scenes, but he had never seen a scene like today. It can be seen that the monsters of the two camps are engaged in an unimaginably brutal battle with their numbers covering every corner of the field of vision. One of the camps gives people a feeling of savagery and power. They are often dominated by red and decorate themselves with various skulls. On the battlefield, these monsters wielded cold weapons and fought against another wave of troops with ever-changing shapes. And it's not just these armies. In the air and on the ground here, incomprehensible changes seem to be happening every moment. The ground would suddenly erupt into fountains of blood, but in midair they would transform into chunks of metal, winged venomous snakes, or a variety of other things. The air will release all kinds of strange monsters, or suddenly ignite, and suddenly snow and ice will fall. It's like a madman here, using his brush to paint a crazy world. And the most important point is that the atmosphere of the subspace here is too strong. As a psychic, Adjutant Chen could feel that the environment here was not so much a physical universe as it was transforming into the subspace. The voice that had been silent in my ears for a long time suddenly rang again. And this time it was filled with indescribable tenderness and unimaginable beauty. It seems that just a sound contains all the beauty that people desire and all the dreams that people long for in the world. Adjutant Chen did not notice that the sound this time was different from the previous one. At this moment, the Prince of Pleasure, the youngest evil god of the warp, Slaanesh, personally contacted her. It only took a few seconds to drive the car back, but Adjutant Chen stopped. The sound was so good that she subconsciously wanted to listen to it more and then forgot about driving. Just at this moment, the nearest vampire ran over, wielding the weapon in his hand and piercing Jack and Adjutant Chen. Originally just a bloodletting vampire. Even if Adjutant Chen did not use psychic power, she could easily defeat it, but she was so absorbed in the magic sound that she completely forgot to observe the surrounding environment. After being pierced, Adjutant Chen didn't know whether it was the power of the humanoid monster or the special subspace environment here. She felt unimaginable pain coming from her wound. Even though she was used to pain, this pain that penetrated her soul had already exceeded the physiological limit of human beings. Adjutant Chen could no longer bear it and almost fainted. But her consciousness was extremely clear and she clearly felt the incredible pain. The bloodletter seemed confused. It drew its sword and attempted another thrust. At this time, Jack had woken up because of the pain. He pulled out his hidden Eldar pistol and shot the bloodletter directly at his head. Hey, what's wrong? Adjutant Chen was still unable to react due to the severe pain. Every muscle in her body was tense, and tears, saliva and urine were flowing out uncontrollably. Jack didn't know what was going on, but he knew he couldn't stay in this apocalyptic place any longer. Jack started the car and wanted to run away with Adjutant Chen, who was obviously abnormal. But the precious opportunity had been wasted. and a Khurn minotaur rushed towards them. This bull-headed Khurn demon possessed amazing brute strength. It easily overturned the centaur assault vehicle, then stepped onto the chassis of the vehicle and chopped it down with the axe in its hand. With just a few strokes, he cut open the centaur assault vehicle's chassis and pulled Jack out. The minotaur swung the axe again, and Jack's headless body fell directly to the ground. As for his head, the minotaur inserted it into the spikes on its back and placed it together with the heads of several Tzeentch demons. Because of the intervention of the power of Slaanesh, Adjutant Chen saw the entire scene even though he was trapped under the car, and it was played in 365 degrees without any blind spots. Adjutant Chen, who was unable to move due to the severe pain, miraculously began to move slightly by willpower. Jack is Adjutant Chen's son. After Adjutant Chen was rescued, Adjutant Chen always regarded Jack as her master, the only master, not the boss. Adjutant Chen has a complex feeling for Jack that is a mixture of family affection, love, and even the relationship between master and servant. In fact, even Adjutant Chen herself couldn't clearly explain what she wanted to be to Jack. But one thing is clear. It was so clear that it seemed like a preset NPC. Chen will always love Captain Jack. And now, Jack was being killed right in front of her eyes, and she could do nothing. How could she not be heartbroken? At this time, the devilish voice said at the right time. Do you think he just died? No, I'm not that lucky. He will be sacrificed to the blood god Khurn, and become an ornament on Khurn's skull throne, using his wails to please the blood god for eternity. Stop talking. Adjutant Chen wanted to cover her ears, but the severe pain made it difficult for her to do so. Don't you want to save him? Don't you love him? Are you willing to watch him suffer for eternity? And you obviously have the ability to save him. What on earth do you want? I can give you everything. Take it. Adjutant Chen's psychological defenses finally collapsed, and she screamed in despair in her heart. Open your heart, child, and both you and your lover will be saved. Following Mimi Moyen's request, Adjutant Chen completely opened up his heart and surrendered to her. Then a new teleportation portal opened with Adjutant Chen as the core. Chapter 67. All the Eldar gathered together. In an instant, Adjutant Chen felt extreme pain. She clearly felt that every inch of her flesh and blood was crushed by the power of the Supreme Heaven and transformed into a portal to open the subspace. At the same time, Adjutant Chen also felt the ultimate joy. Under the seductive music, everything brought him an indescribable pleasure. Adjutant Chen clearly sensed that his body had formed a door that seemed to reach straight into the sky. The beauty of the intricately carved reliefs on the gate has surpassed the limits of what humans can achieve. The door opened gently, and singing accompanied by countless kinds of music came out. The song praises the Prince of Joy, but also praises pain, despair, justice, and courage. The song praises all the ugliness in the world, and also praises all the beauty. It seems that everything in this world can bring the singer the ultimate joy. A strong lavender aroma seeped out from the door. Just one sniff is enough to make a person intoxicated and fascinated forever. The first thing that stretched out from the door was a pair of arthropod-like pincers. The pink and purple pincers clamped the door and pushed it outward with greater force, causing the door to open completely. Then, surrounded by countless lustful demons, the huge body also descended into the physical universe. He is tall, with strong sheep's hooves, and his body has both male and female characteristics as well as various animal features. The elder has a pair of large horns on his head with a long tongue sticking out, and behind him are a pair of huge arthropod-like claws. Obviously, in terms of appearance, both Khurn and Tzeentch demons are handsome compared to this absurd and weird demon, but this big demon exudes infinite charm just by standing here, making all living and non-living things obsessed and crazy about it. His name is the Great Daemon of Slaanesh, Nakari the Bewitched. After the enchanter was a tall and slender demon who looked more like a woman. He had 3 arms, one similar to a human's, one was black with many sharp claws, and the other was a sharp sword. His head with 4 big pink horns looked towards the battlefield with a ferocious smile, sticking out his long tongue, tasting the blood and pain in the air. It is the embodiment of sadism and jealousy. Known as the Tormentor, the Soul Eater, the Incarnation of Filth, and the Angel of Despair. His name is Zaraknil. Following Zaraknil out came a creature that looked more like a daemon of Nurgle than a daemon of Slaanesh. It was a fat man who was as huge as a mountain of flesh, sitting on a mobile palace carried by 666 Slaanesh demons. He was wearing extravagant clothes, with his chest open, revealing his huge belly, which had a large zippered hole. There were various bottles and jars around him, which contained either exquisite delicacies or weird and disgusting dishes. But they all have one thing in common: they are precious foods with extreme taste impact, some of which are even enough to exchange for a planet. The fat man's 10 stubby fingers kept grabbing food and stuffing it into his mouth. If he couldn't eat any more, he would simply unzip his stomach and dump out all the undigested food. As soon as he arrived on the battlefield, the great demon sniffed greedily, and his huge, thick tongue kept licking his lips. "I smell a whole new scent. Ha 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 ha, new ingredients, new cooking methods, he he he." The great devil laughed heartily. He was the embodiment of the desire for food and the #1 gourmet under the Prince of Joy. Abaddon, the great gourmet. After this great gourmet, other great demons came out one after another. This Slaanesh did not adopt the approach of Cain and Tzeentch, which were led by the chief daemon and mainly competed in the erosion of the warp. He reduced the number of demonic armies, but sent out 66 great keepers of secrets, great demons of Slaanesh, in one go. After Nikolai the Mesmer came to the physical universe, he used his hands to hold up Adjutant Chen's soul, which had been tortured by the power of Slaanesh and had almost lost itself. Nikolai carefully placed Adjutant Chen's soul into his body, and soon Adjutant Chen's face grew out from his waist. He first showed an uncontrollable intoxicated expression, then woke up and looked around in panic. "Are you looking for him, little guy?" The enchanter Nikolai used one of his large pincers to lift Jack's head in front of him and show it to Adjutant Chen. As for the previous Cain Minotaur, he had already been easily beaten to death. With only her face left, Adjutant Chen struggled, but she could do nothing. The enchanted Nikolai seemed satisfied with Adjutant Chen's reaction. "Don't worry, you will all be bathed in the great grace of the god in the divine realm of Prince Joy." As he spoke, the soul-crazy Nikari used the power of darkness to absorb Jack's stolen soul. Jack's face appeared next to Adjutant Chen, but unlike his usual carefree and unrestrained appearance, Jack's face now looked hideous, as if he was suffering great pain. After finding Jack, Adjutant Chen stopped struggling. She rubbed her face against Jack's face again and again, as if trying to comfort Jack. On the other side, Nazarick found Mare crying while holding his staff. He grabbed Mare and the crying Mare waved the artifact-level staff, Shadow of the World Tree, and hit Nazarick randomly. However, the so-called artifact-level props in the game seemed to be not good enough in front of the real god fragments, big demons. Nazarick made 3.5 turns and then made a beautiful throw, throwing Mare into the demonic domain of Slaanesh in an almost perfect parabola. A light laugh from Slaanesh was heard from the demon realm, followed by a scream from Mare that contained endless despair and pain. With the addition of the power of Slaanesh, the situation on the battlefield changed again. Carlos and Scarbrand temporarily ceased fighting, and the god-favored demon Reincarnation and Evel also united against the outside world. Everyone first targeted Slaanesh, who was the most powerful force at the moment. Then the power of Cain and Tzeentch's blessing increased again, and new demons began to enter the world as reinforcements. The three parties began a more brutal fight. If one side temporarily gains the upper hand during this period, the other two will immediately unite to attack them. Some extremely hidden place in the subspace. Legend has it that this is the mysterious place where all the knowledge of the Eldar is stored. In the deepest part of the Black Library, there is a book made of crystal on a crystal base. These are the quotations of the Eldar god of laughter, Szeentch himself. The Eldar call it the Book of Destiny. Ever since the fall of the Eldar and the birth of Slaanesh, this book has been sealed with shining chains. It is said that the laughing god Tzeentch prepared the ultimate joke for the Eldar's mortal enemy, Slaanesh. In the war between the Eldar and Chaos, Slaanesh will continue to win, but in the end, under the deception of the laughing god Tzeentch, Slaanesh will use all his power to save the Eldar instead of destroying them. This is an ultimate joke, the most proud work of the god of laughter. But now the chains of the Book of Destiny were torn apart, and the laughing god Tzeentch himself raised the Book of Destiny high up and then smashed it to pieces. The Harlequin troops scattered across the galaxy are gathering in one direction, and at the same time conveying a message to all the Eldar forces along the way. From the depths of the subspace to the abyss of the savage world, a sentence is echoing. By order of the laughing god Xijokai, the time has come. There is only one chance to escape from the mortal enemy, the Eldar refers to Slaanesh. All Eldar gather together. Chapter 68. Reinforcements. Trazan the Infinite, one of the overlords of the Necron dynasty of Nysalak and ruler of the tomb world of Solemnus. In countless stories, Trazan is a legendary figure. He is one of the Necrons who has been awake the longest, perhaps because he has lived too long, or perhaps something went wrong during the biological transformation. Anyway, after Trazan became a Necron, he developed a hobby of collecting since some time ago. The only small problem is that when he collects things, he never asks the original owner of the item for consent. Sometimes even the original owner of the work may be included in the collection. In order to collect, Trazan often traveled around, hiding his identity and using an unknown but certainly very large number of clones. This is also the origin of his name, the Endless. And now, it was originally just a matter of sending a clone in disguise to follow a warship of the human empire to see if he could find anything valuable worth collecting. Then Trazan confirmed again and again, almost daring not to imagine, that he had really found something incredible this time. On an extremely desolate world there is a portal leading to another universe. It is not a separate planet, nor a star region. Although the Necrons have long since declined, they do not regard these as so serious. What he discovered was a completely new universe. After confirming his discovery, he began to contact powerful space undeads such as Emperor Krispek of the Nihilak dynasty, the Storm King, and the enlightened Zeroth. But he had not considered that chaos would act so swiftly and decisively. At the beginning, the chaos gods of the warp used similar methods as before, corruption, and sending spokesmen. These are all normal, but for some reason, it is almost time for the Khurn army to be defeated, and then it will trigger a melee between the chaos gods. But now, because it was originally just a plan to take advantage of opportunities, Trazan didn't prepare much strength at all. He now has a Scythe Sword class light cruiser. Although the Necrons' high technology makes their ships much stronger than those of other races, relying on just one ship to fight chaos is obviously not enough. Trazan had nearly blown up the communications equipment. Obviously, even for the Necrons who can use inertia-free engines to race in the physical universe, it will take time to arrive, not to mention that many forces still need to wake up their armies and complete the assembly. It is now confirmed that the nearest troops are only those led by Sylvia the Radiant and another clone of Trazan. If everything goes well, they will arrive in a few hours. On the current battlefield, because of the struggle between the three chaos powers, the mass of the entire planet has disappeared by 1,000th. Although 1,000th does not sound like a lot, it is an entire planet. In fact, the damage caused is truly at the level of burning mountains and boiling seas. If the three evil gods had not checked and balanced each other, the planet that held the hope of a new world would have been dragged into the subspace as a whole. Trazan decided that he couldn't wait any longer. A few hours might cause the situation on the battlefield to become unbalanced, so he had to contain it first. Since the battlefield is already chaotic, let's just make it even more chaotic. In short, it's just a matter of delaying time, and it can still be done. Thinking of this, Trazan drove the Scythe Sword class light cruiser without hesitation and joined the battlefield. The powerful technology of the Necrons allowed Trazan to ignore the impact of the planet's gravity on the spacecraft and directly fly the spacecraft into the planet's low Earth orbit, and then bombard the demon army on the ground with full firepower. At the same time, Trazan also activated the Blackstone array. Although a warp interference of this scale could no longer be handled by a light cruiser, Trazan still opened the Blackstone array with the attitude that it would be profitable if he could cause some trouble to the warp. At the same time, a large number of undead troops were sent to the ground. The other side of the galaxy. The Emperor on the Emperor's dream opened his eyes and sighed deeply. I made a wrong judgment. The new world is far more important than I had previously imagined. My friend Malkador, activate the psychic choir of the end. I will take back as much power as I can from the Astronomicon. This time it's worth a try. Send the following troops, specific names omitted. They will appear directly on the battlefield later. The only order given to them is to seize the portal there. To this end, they are allowed to do whatever is convenient for them. After saying that, the Emperor closed his eyes again and focused all his energy on that space. With the help of the Choir of Final Psychers, a special unit of 10,000 Psychers, the Emperor, the most powerful Psycher in mankind and possibly in the physical universe, regained some of his power. The cold golden sun in the subspace suddenly expanded, and many of the surrounding demons were unable to escape and were directly swallowed up and destroyed. Several spaceships that were originally sailing in the subspace and preparing to provide support suddenly accelerated and reached the destination in an instant, which would have taken at least several days or even weeks. What the hell just happened here? The first to arrive at the battlefield was the destroyer Thousand Blades Angel of the 1st Legion Dark Angels. On top of them were members of the Steel Wing, one of the 6 wings of the Dark Angels Legion, all elite veterans of Terran descent. Over the years, they have fought on countless battlefields and even learned some deeply hidden secrets. But they have never seen a scene like this. The planet seems to have gone mad. All kinds of strange subspace monsters covered the entire surface of the planet, divided into different camps, fighting each other. Then there was a spaceship that looked like a Necrons and was attacking the ground crazily. And this planet is like the most absurd nightmare, with blood and water gushing out from the ground and fire raining from the sky, but the next moment the blood and fire rain may turn into all kinds of strange shapes. All the dials were sounding alarms, and the ship's machine spirit was almost frantic. "Lieutenant, there are enemies everywhere." "Then fire everywhere." As soon as Myron gave the order, he saw another Imperial spaceship arriving at the battlefield, followed by the second, third, and fourth, until a powerful fleet was formed, and the transmission of the human empire stopped. These fleets included ships from the Dark Angels of the First Legion, the Thousand Sons Legion, the Word-Bearers Legion, the Mechanikus Exploration Fleet, ships from the Imperial Navy, the Imperial Army, and even ships from the Luna Wolves. There is obviously no need for identification in the situation at the scene. Since there are enemies everywhere, just fire everywhere. Chapter 69. The Divine Machine appears. Sage Turing Zeta looked at the chaotic battlefield in front of him, his electronic eyes flashing so fast that they seemed to be on fire. Turing Zeta is the managing sage of an exploration fleet of the Mechanicum and the teacher of Alpha 001. He had received information from his disciple Alpha 001 that he had discovered the complete STC template and was rushing over here. Some interesting intelligence was received on the way, which made Sage Turing Zeta very interested, but unfortunately, considering the long distance between the exploration fleet and the destination, even if it was faster than light speed through the subspace, it would take several weeks. Originally, Sage Turing Zeta was very anxious about this. After all, there is a complete STC template and a new world that may contain a lot of unique knowledge. He must arrive before other Mechanikus forces so that he can gain the greatest benefit. Then, the order from the Emperor himself rang in the ears of Turing Zeta, who was originally traveling in the warp. Then the exploration fleet was surrounded by some powerful force, and then rushed through the warp, directly crossing the vast distance in a way that Turing Zeta could not understand and arrived at its destination. Then he saw the chaotic and absurd scene before him, like his worst nightmare. What the hell are these things everywhere? What is going on with the subspace environment here? And why would the expedition fleet directly appear above the battlefield, despite the voyage taking weeks? Then I thought about the Emperor's will that seemed to be still echoing in my ears. Sage Turing Zeta could not help but think of the idea that the Emperor was the incarnation of the Messiah of OM. As the former engine oiler of the old Martian spur gear flag, Sage Turing Zeta was present when the Emperor came in person to conquer Mars. At that time, some of the Mechanikus, priests of the Mechanikus chose to kneel down and worship the golden armored warrior, acknowledging him as the incarnation of the god of all machines, the Messiah of OM. Turing Zeta and more mechanical priests were forced to do so by the Emperor and his powerful military forces. In their hearts, they never acknowledged that the Emperor was the Messiah of OM. This faction later attracted nearly half of the Mechanikus members during the Horus Heresy, forming the later Dark Mechanikus. In the original history, Turing Zeta was also a member of the Dark Mechanikus and would die in the subsequent Great Heresy War. Now he was impressed by the power displayed by the Emperor. Turing Zeta's previous view of the Emperor was nothing more than another lying psyker warlord leading a brutal army of genetically modified warriors. And now, he was sure that no psychic could achieve such great power, so the Emperor was not just a mere psychic, he was truly God, the OM Messiah. Sage Turing Zeta quietly changed his faith without anyone noticing. Of course, this time due to the Emperor's direct appearance, many members of the Mechanicum who were traveling with them also directly believed in the Emperor. Of course, the Emperor was in no mood to pay attention to such small details. However, these members of the Mechanikus immediately burst into great enthusiasm after arriving on the battlefield, which still satisfied the Emperor. Send out all the forces, all the armed servants, Skitarii, and combat mechanic priests, and also send out the Titan formations. Titan is the human empire's ultimate weapon and one of the ultimate land warfare weapons. Built using legacy Golden Age technology, these gigantic humanoid bipedal walking machines are of enormous size and devastating firepower. Because of its powerful strength and importance to the Mechanikus, Titans are also called God's machines, and are regarded as the embodiment of the power of the God of all machines. In the 40k era, Titans are more difficult to build, there are fewer of them, and the management is stricter. But in the 30k era, there had not yet been the massive loss and regression of technology caused by the Horus heresy. Although Titans are also precious war machines for the human empire and the Mechanics, on a larger scale, they can organize a huge Titan army to fight each other. If they are dispersed, many Mechanics forces can also have some Titan troops. For example, Turing Zeta's exploration fleet is composed of 50 Titans, a relatively small-scale Titan legion, so that it can conduct some important academic exchanges with heretics and aliens at any time. Following Turing Zeta's order, the Titan Legion began to enter the ground battlefield under the cover of the exploration fleet. Now this planet has been literally dug up 3 feet deep due to the constant plunder and corrosion of the warp, and the equator has been directly swallowed by the warp to form a huge pit about the size of the Pacific Ocean, so careful consideration is needed in choosing a landing site. However, the location of the portal is the place where the subspace corrosion is the least and the damage is the least because of the struggle between the 3 parties. Seeing that the Mechanics was preparing to deploy Titan troops, other Imperial forces immediately offered support. Finally, after a series of twists and turns, several large transport planes of the Mechanicus exploration fleet successfully transported the Titans to the ground battlefield. 10 of the smallest Rapier-class reconnaissance Titans rushed out first to provide fire cover. Then, 8 medium-sized Predator Titans, which were the main force of the Titan Legion, entered the chaotic battlefield under the cover of 20 War Dog-class Titans. 8 Getter-class Titans, a sub-model of the Predator class with specially enhanced long-range firepower, provide long-range support. 4 Heavy Warlord-class Titans that serve as mobile fortresses destroy all enemies. Then there were countless Skitarii and fighter servants gathered around the Titan Legion to provide protection and support. The Cybernetic Corps was also thrown into the battlefield, using powerful firepower to support the Titans' actions. Normally, the appearance of such a powerful army on an unnaturalized planet would be enough to directly force the other party to accept academic exchanges. If you appear on an alien world, you can directly destroy the opponent. And on this crazy battlefield, this mixed force is indeed not enough to play a decisive role, but it definitely cannot be ignored. Titans ranging from 10 to dozens of meters tall took their own steps. The earth began to tremble with their majestic steps, and the sky, surging with chaotic magic energy, was torn apart by the roar of their horns. Volcano cannons, seismic cannons, melta cannons, plasma destroyers, and other powerful weapons bombarded the battlefield crazily. There are enemies everywhere anyway, so there is no need to aim. The Mechanics does not have experience in facing chaos demons, but the demons that enter the physical universe can also be destroyed by physical weapons or energy weapons, which makes it easy to deal with. The Titan Legion began to rampage, and the Crusaders following the Titan Legion were spewing lethal doses of radiation. Some weak demons would be killed by the leaked high-energy radiation just by getting close. The Titan Legion's charge naturally attracted the attention of the great demons on the battlefield. The first one to rush over was a demon in human form with bull horns, its dark red muscles bulging and covered with sharp horns of various sizes. This big demon was almost as tall as a warlord-level Titan. It was a reinforcement that had just arrived on the battlefield. He rushed towards the Titan Legion with a huge meat cleaver. When he was halfway through the charge, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his foot. He looked down and found that a space marine who was much taller than an ordinary space marine was digging his left leg with a power claw in his hand, and his left leg was almost broken. The demon roared and wanted to chop the hateful mortal into pieces, but the Titan who had already arrived nearby swung his oversized power fist and knocked the unlucky demon's head off. Chapter 70, The Invincible Abaddon. The black-armored space marine who assisted Titan in killing a great demon teleported away from the fallen body of the great demon and teleported himself to the most intense part of the battlefield. There were nearly 1,000 space marines fighting there, most of them wearing white armor, and hundreds of them wearing black armor which was obviously much thicker. Their common characteristics are that they are taller, have thicker armor, stronger firepower, and are more elite than ordinary space marines. Those much thicker black armors are officially called tactical dreadnought armor, also known as Terminator power armor. Under normal circumstances, it is common for space marines to have Terminator power armor in their tactical organization, but if a company has more than 100 elite Terminators, then they have only one possibility. They were the Primarch's personal guard, drawn from the Legion's most elite first company. The team that is now showing its might on the battlefield is from the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves, and is called the Gasland Terminators. These black-armored Terminators are the pride of the 16th Legion, and their usual task is to form the tip of the spear where the fighting is most intense. They are also part of the first company, and their usual task is to destroy the enemy's heart, or directly decapitate the enemy's command and control. These warriors are all favorites of Horus and are directly commanded by First Captain Ezekiel Abaddon. Abaddon, the captain of the Luna Wolves' First Company and one of the 3 heroes of the Great Crusade of the Human Empire, has now arrived on the battlefield. He is the warrior who just cooperated with the Titan to kill the demon. In the original history of Warhammer 30k, Abaddon was corrupted by chaos along with Horus, killing countless loyal warriors. After Horus' defeat, he fled into the Eye of Terror. In the following 10,000 years, he launched dark expeditions against the human empire time and time again, becoming one of the empire's most powerful enemies. But now Abaddon is still one of the most outstanding space marines in the empire. As the captain of the First Company of the Luna Wolves, he has fought on hundreds of planets and established countless industries. Now he is also exerting his strength on this battlefield. Abaddon was equipped with a power claw in his left hand and an extremely sharp power sword in his right hand. After a brief fight just now, Abaddon found that these warp monsters were more vulnerable to melee attacks than ranged ones, so he decisively chose to lead the First Company of the Luna Wolves to eliminate the enemy with glorious melee combat. Abaddon danced on the battlefield with the cooperation of his battle brothers. His power armor was powerful yet extremely flexible, and his swordsmanship was superb and exquisite, reaching perfection. Abaddon used the short-distance transmission function inside the Terminator power armor to the extreme. Abaddon was always able to insert himself into a battle at the most appropriate time and kill his enemies with minimal effort. No matter whether it was the armies of Cain, Tzeentch, or Slaanesh, they all fell in Abaddon's hands like straw in a hurricane. Such bravery naturally attracted the attention of some other demons. Slaanesh's chief gourmet, Abaddon, was sitting in the huge sedan chair and approaching Abaddon and his men, with countless Slaanesh demons, Slaanesh beasts, and other demons providing support for him. The great demon of Slaanesh had no intention of engaging in an honorable duel. The great gourmet Abaddon just coveted Abaddon's body, literally. In Abaddon's opinion, a body that is so strong and can perform such skills must have been tempered through thousands of trials and tribulations, and its brain must also be highly developed. It must taste delicious, it just depends on how you eat it. The eyeballs can be used to soak in wine, and the brain can be used to cook hot pot. There are many muscles, and there are even more ways to use them. As for the gene seed of the Space Marines, it is the highlight and needs to be carefully considered. As he thought about it, the great gourmet Abaddon couldn't help but drool. Considering his size, which was even bigger than the dreadnought, the saliva he drooled was like pouring water from a basin, directly pouring all over the succubus serving him below. Abaddon also noticed the approach of Abaddon, the unusual great demon. He and his battle brothers cooperated with each other to quickly strangle Abaddon, but there were too many Slaanesh troops following Abaddon, and even the First Company could hardly destroy him directly under the layers of protection of the army. The great gourmet Abaddon soon came to the vicinity of the First Company, where the thickness of the great demon guards was obviously weakened a lot. The elite of the First Company rushed forward and got closer and closer to him, but Abaddon didn't care. He waited until Abaddon, as the spearhead, rushed in front of him, and then grabbed a handful of food from the dishes beside him and threw it on the ground. The ingredients and dishes that Abaddon kept around him were all of the finest quality, and some of these foods had special functions. For example, the food that Abaddon threw out just now created a special energy field after it landed on the ground, which just separated Abaddon from his fighting brothers and trapped Abaddon on his side. The energy field lasted about 5 minutes, but it was enough. Abaddon laughed and slapped his belly and said, "Little one, what's your name? When I taste your strong body and strong soul, I hope to know your name. It will surely be remembered for a long time." Abaddon was too lazy to pay attention to this disgusting demon. While clearing out the Slaanesh beasts that were rushing towards him, he was looking for an opportunity to kill Abaddon. Seeing that his men were not only unable to do anything to Abaddon in a short period of time, but were also constantly being attacked by Abaddon, Abaddon decided to take action himself. He grabbed the 2 sides of the zipper on his belly and tore it open to form a big mouth. This big mouth full of sharp teeth, big enough to chew the dreadnought in, bit Abaddon hard. Abaddon, a veteran of many battles, activated the short-distance teleportation in time to avoid the attack, and all the Slaanesh demons in his original location disappeared, leaving only a few disintegrating limbs. Abaddon considered teleporting out directly, but the energy field generated by the demon blocked the outward transmission of the Terminator power armor, and Abaddon could only teleport inside the energy field. Ha 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 ha! Abaddon laughed even louder, and a third mouth opened on his back, a third mouth opened on his left hand, a fourth mouth opened on his right hand, a fifth mouth opened from the back of his head, and a sixth mouth opened from his waist. Abaddon laughed loudly, and his 6 mouths continued to launch various terrible attacks. Any demon that directly faces him will be devoured instantly. Don't run away, little guy. I'm tired of eating these things. Don't worry, I will make you the ultimate delicacy. Abaddon's attacks became more and more frequent, and Abaddon had less and less space to dodge. Even though Abaddon's skills had reached perfection, he began to look embarrassed. Suddenly Abaddon seemed to hear a voice. Just tell him to swing the sword at the next moment. Abaddon sensed a familiar aura from this voice, it seemed to be the voice of the Emperor. Abaddon chose to believe this voice, and in the next moment he no longer dodged, but swung the blade in his hand. The originally blue decomposition force field suddenly turned golden, and then burned with golden flames. The sharp sword of golden flame cut off Abaddon's head without any hindrance as if it was cutting through the air. Chapter 72. The Poor and Helpless Supreme. The planet where the portal is located. The 3 evil gods of the warp, the human empire that has rushed over urgently, and the Necrons that are just arriving are performing a traditional art in the Warhammer world, the big melee. None of the major forces can trust each other, and everyone wants to monopolize this portal that may bring about decisive changes. As a result, the major forces began to exchange fire with each other, sometimes joining together to attack the advantaged party, and then stabbing in the back without hesitation once the situation changed. In the end, it literally meant that the entire area under the sky became a battlefield and people's brains were beaten out of their wits. On such a crazy battlefield, some targets that pose no threat are easily ignored. For example, our great king of the Sorceress Kingdom, guild president of Olgaun, the eternal supreme ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick, who is far-sighted, powerful and invincible, laughs, originally named Flying Squirrel, now renamed Ins, but his real identity is Suzuki Satoru, a corporate slave in another cyberpunk world. Now Ins was hiding in a big pit, trembling. This pit was created by the powerful magical force that was unleashed during the battle between Carlos and Scarbrand. It was roughly the size of 3 football fields, but its depth was unfathomable. Ins threw a stone into it, but there was no sound of the stone hitting the ground. Now Ins dug a hole horizontally more than 300 meters below the pit, hid inside, and then doubted his life inside. After traveling to another world, Ins had subordinates he completely trusted for the first time, and had enough power to conquer the world. He then discovered a completely new world with countless new things. These 3 kinds of joy combined should obviously bring more joy. But, why, be it exploration, conquest, or preparing for a war in advance, it was obviously me who started it all. But what went wrong? All the preparations and arrangements suddenly became a joke in the face of absolute power. Ins once said that justice lies in strength. It is natural and right for the weak to be exploited by the strong. As long as you have power, you can do anything. This is the truth of this world, and it also applies to yourself. Even if it is yourself, if you encounter a more powerful opponent, you can only be exploited, so you have to pursue power. Ins's personality is probably the kind that would tear up other people's umbrellas just because he himself has been caught in the rain. Ins was once an ordinary office worker. Although we still don't know the operating logic of the utopian world where Ins lives, how can an extremely busy office worker spend a lot of time playing online games and even spend money to get into the top of the rankings? But none of that matters here. Although Ins said that the weak should be exploited by the strong, he was obviously not comfortable when it was his turn to be the weak one. Especially since the gap in strength was so great that Ins didn't even know what value he had to his enemy. Now, it seems that every warring party can directly crush the Great Tomb of Nazarick. The survival of the Great Tomb will entirely depend on the ideas of the enemy and will no longer have anything to do with its own resistance. Just like the lizards who rose up in resistance, just like the innocent victims of the kingdom, just like the martyrs of the Holy Kingdom. If he hadn't forced himself to stay calm, Ins would have probably burst into tears by now. If he hadn't needed to defecate, he would have probably become incontinent by now. But even with forced calm, he couldn't completely suppress the waves of despair that surged up. Ins hugged his knees like a helpless child, wondering what his fate would be. You might die. Putting aside those demons that looked like evil forces, even as for the human empire, from Ins's perspective, his sneak attack had obviously really angered the other side. Damn it, you are so strong, why didn't you say it at the beginning? Is it fun to go to the novice village to fry fish with a max level character, these bastards? Bag High Road. The more Ins thought about this, the angrier he became, but he immediately suppressed it by forcing himself to calm down. After regaining his senses, he cursed in a low voice for fear of being discovered. then continue to play badly. There is no escape now. It's like a world-class boss carnival outside right now. Any stray bullet has the power of a super-level magic. It's not like Ins hasn't tried it before, and the result he got was that it proved that players could also be resurrected by resurrection items. Ins was killed almost as soon as he showed up, and then the automatic resurrection item he carried took effect and resurrected Ins. The great demon of Cain who killed Ins was entangled by the great demon of Tzeentch, giving it another chance to escape. But after that, Ins hid here and dared not move again. Just as Ins continued to play badly, a familiar voice sounded beside him. Thanks to the erosion of Toya space, this place now has all kinds of smells and is no longer a vacuum. Mr. Momonga! I finally found you. Ins was stunned, and looked up, and found Albedo parked next to it. Did I forget to set up the detection magic? I didn't pay any attention to my surroundings. Ins realized that he had made such a low-level mistake, but then he laughed at himself in his heart. No matter how well-behaved insects are when facing humans, they will still be stepped on to death. Perhaps it was the effect of being forced to remain calm, but it was very powerful that Ins could still mutter to himself at this time. Then Ins noticed Albedo's condition. Albedo was now in a very miserable state. The original black full-body armor was torn into pieces by some powerful force, and the remaining armor barely remained on Albedo's body in a twisted way. One of the horns on Albedo's head was broken off, one of her eyes was blind, and the world-class item Hell's Abyss that she originally held was nowhere to be found. No, even one of Albedo's arms was missing, and both of her legs were broken below the calves, with eyes still on the wounds. From Ins's perspective, Albedo's HP had already reached the bottom, and the fact that she was still able to move now was a test of her great willpower. Don't move yet, you need to heal your wounds quickly. At this moment, Ins did not have time to think about why Albedo suddenly called out her original online name. Ins took out the highest level healing medicine that Albedo could use from his storage space and handed it to Albedo. As the chief guardian of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Albedo should have had many auxiliary and recovery items herself, but now it seems that she has used up all of them. Albedo knew what was important and what was not. She said nothing and immediately took the healing item and started using it. With the use of the highest level healing item, Albedo's HP was fully restored and her lost organs grew back. Is the hell pit lost? Lordans, I failed in my duty, but please get out of this dangerous situation, and I will accept your punishment. Forget it, it's not your fault. The enemy this time is too strong, so it's normal that we can't save them. How is the situation up there now? Lordans, things are turning around now. First, a bunch of metal skeletons emitting green light suddenly appeared above and opened fire on the demons. Then, a new group of demons that appeared to be of poisonous nature appeared to disrupt the situation. When the situation was already extremely chaotic, a group of guys dressed up like clowns in all kinds of colors came out from nowhere and rushed towards the portal. Thanks to them, we finally have a chance to escape, and return to the Great Tomb. Is that so? That's great. Ins was overjoyed, and briefly discussed the plan with Albedo. Finally, they decided to go. Now they had no choice but to take a gamble and follow the clowns. As soon as they said it, Ins and his companions cautiously came to the surface and found that the fighting was indeed more intense. As Albedo had said, a group of people who looked like clowns were emerging from various places and rushing into the portal. The various forces around them were also trying to stop them. Although the process of breaking through the interception was extremely difficult, clowns still rushed in from time to time. Ins used all his trump cards without hesitation, maxing out buffs and using various summoning items to create cannon fodder. In the end, he just charged forward regardless of anything. On the way, Ins discovered a group of red-armored space marines who seemed very excited. One of their leaders, who was holding a scepter-like weapon, wanted to capture Ins, but at this moment, Scarbrand's attack brushed past them and took Ins and the red-armored warrior behind the portal. The red-armored space marine who fell to the ground was furious, got up from the ground and shouted. Damn bastard, today I, Arabus, will tear you into pieces. Chapter 73. Current situation. The clowns of the Eldar used the webway to suddenly appear on the battlefield. They were the most elite units of the Eldar, and their average individual combat power was even higher than that of the human custodes. They were always elusive. Clowns serve the Eldar god of laughter, and they usually act as a troop. Usually, there are no more than a dozen clowns at a time, but now hundreds of troops and thousands of clowns have suddenly appeared, and there is even an incarnation of the god of laughter among them. With such powerful fighting power, even though the clowns are extremely small in number, they will immediately cause chaos once they appear on the battlefield. The clown's goal is also very clear, which is to rush into the portal. The demons naturally would not allow this, especially the army of Slaanesh, who immediately changed the direction of their attack and focused on dealing with the Eldar clowns. On the other side, the Necrons' reinforcements also arrived at the scene. After a large army centered on hundreds of seraph-type giant structures joined the battlefield, the pressure on the demons in the ground battle began to rise sharply. Just one firing from the megastructure's singularity generator wiped out a dozen great demons, and the Necron fleet that rushed over from space was also doing its best to weaken the connection between the subspace and reality. But this time, the Chaos Gods, faced with an opportunity that could change the great game forever and allow the Supreme Beings to decide the winner, attach great importance to it and are constantly increasing their investment in mortal forces. New great demons and new demon legions were thrown into this world as if they were given away for free. On the other side, a large-scale sacrifice suddenly broke out in a spaceship of a heavy armored regiment from the Empire. 7,777 Chaos Believers sacrificed themselves, opening a path to the Garden of Nurgle in this world whose reality had been shattered by the violent warp. Plague Father Kugith, who had been waiting on the other side, immediately led the army of kind Father Nurgle into the real world. The four gods finally gathered together, making the already chaotic situation even more chaotic. However, because of different strategic goals or levels of hatred, everyone still has a certain tacit understanding or targeting. For example, the Eldar clowns are not interested in melee combat, they just want to rush into the portal. After the Harlequin has appeared for a while, the Eldar Ark can also appear on the battlefield. The new Eldar reinforcements basically follow the Harlequins and move towards New Hope. The first priority of the Slaanesh Daemon army is to target the Eldar Harlequins, and the second is to fight the Khurn Daemon army. The Khurn army will first attack the Slaanesh army, and then the Tzeentch army. After the Nurgle army enters the battlefield, the Tzeentch army will prioritize targeting the Nurgle army first. The Nurgle army joined the battlefield with a smile and fought with the Tzeentch army fiercely. The main purpose of the four divine and demonic armies is not to directly destroy each other, but to deepen the corruption of their respective gods and strive to directly take away the entire planet. The Necrons are a self-contained entity that mainly attacks chaos demons. They have formed a tacit understanding with mortal races such as the Human Empire and the Eldar not to attack each other, and they will occasionally send some units into the portal. The Human Empire's army, under the command of the Lord of Mankind, has the main purpose of seizing the portal, so most humans of this era have no knowledge of the chaos demons. But under the obviously more disgusting warp appearance of the demons, and with the Lord of Humanity no longer pretending and telling them directly, the human forces temporarily formed a tacit understanding with the Eldar and the Necrons. There was also a green-skinned orc pirate ship that appeared on the way. They came because they smelled the scent of a fight. As soon as I emerged from the subspace, I found that the fight here was a bit too big, so I turned around and wanted to run. But can I escape? The Necrons, the Human Empire and even the Eldar Ark were all startled by the sudden appearance of the green-skinned pirate ship. The situation was too chaotic now, and everyone didn't want anyone to mess up, so they all focused their fire on the greenskins. Then the unlucky greenskin pirate captain turned into a well-cooked grilled mushroom on the spot. A Primarch from the human side has already arrived at the battlefield, and the battlefield command is now handed over to the Primarch of the 17th Legion, the word-bearers Lorgar or Lion. In fact, the Emperor had considered sending more Primarches, and he himself was eager to join the battle himself. But obviously, even though the current Emperor may be the most powerful psychic entity in the physical universe after the four gods, he is not yet the 40kth Emperor who is believed in by countless humans. No matter how powerful the Emperor is, he is still just a mortal being and has his own limits. He could only send over suitable and easily transportable spacecraft in the warp, and the four gods would not allow the Emperor to continue to increase his troops. Not long after the smooth explosion of troops began, the spaceships heading for support encountered various interceptions from the warp, including but not limited to the sudden appearance of huge solid walls, endless demons attacking the spaceships, warp storms generated without any warning, and so on. Lorgar was the only one brought in as a Primarch. As the person with the highest status at the scene, he took over the power of command immediately after arriving at the scene. Although the situation did not look very good due to the presence of only Lorgar, the word-bearer's flagship, Law of Faith, also successfully arrived at the battlefield. The addition of tens of thousands of fully armed and well-equipped word-bearers greatly reduced the pressure on the battlefield. Then, on this battlefield where lasers and explosive bombs were flying, Chainsaw axes and phase swords were dancing, and people's brains were being beaten out of their heads, and Albedo began their escape. Although the clowns, led by the incarnation of the Eldar god of laughter Zigakai, were targeted by the demons, they were still unstoppable. Ins didn't know what the incarnation of the god of laughter was like, with fancy clothes, a crescent face, a nose and a chin so sharp that they could kill people, but he knew that the incarnation was extremely powerful. Ins and Albedo followed the Eldar clown and advanced along the path cleared by the clown and the god of laughter. A Slaanesh daemon discovered Ins and his companions and immediately tried to pounce on them and capture them, but the Kern daemon Scarbrand also noticed them and chose to kill the Slaanesh daemon without hesitation. During the battle between the two sides, Scarbrand's axe tilted, and the powerful airflow it created knocked Ins, Albedo and Arabus, who was trying to capture them, into the portal. "This is a crazy place, I don't want to stay there for even a second." But Arabus obviously had no intention of letting them go. After coming to this world, Arabus' first reaction was surprise. It turned out that the Emperor had high hopes for him and was willing to use a miraculous portal for this purpose. This is what the inside looks like. It looks like an ordinary world and an ordinary ruin. But Arabus still felt the difference here. The most direct feeling was that the voice from the highest heaven that had been surrounding him was gone. Arabus' innate 24K pure trash brain, which had been damaged by the subspace, was stunned for a moment. After leaving the subspace, he seemed to see things much more clearly. But even though he was stunned for a moment, Arabus did not stop his actions. He used the special force field generator he carried with him to create a large force field, which directly enveloped Ins and Albedo. Chapter 74, When Will Arabus Die? Arabus, the Hand of Fate, self-proclaimed, was one of the most trusted lieutenants of the Primarch Lorgar and the chief chaplain of the Word-Bearers. In order to prevent some readers from not knowing the situation of Arabus, a special introduction is given here. Have you ever seen such a person in your life? This kind of person is mean and rude, and is mean and disgusting to everyone. Even the most unclean ones would spit at him, and even the most secret keepers would not be able to set up a tent for him. If you do nothing but harm others and benefit yourself throughout your life, you will be useless and never satisfied with anything you eat. Write the words "you deserve a beating" on your forehead. Squeeze death into your teeth. From the prostate to the tonsils, there is a disgusting smell. There is no other purpose in life except to annoy people. Of course, you won't encounter such people in real life. After all, even the Zafra chemical dogs in the Empire's standard scum concentration area have flashes of humanity. Even abstract things like malicious warriors have behaviors that are worthy of respect. But it is really hard to find such a person who has no good points at all, a 24K pure scum, a born anti-social and anti-human bad guy. And now everyone can see such a precious creature, it is Arabus. But the fact is that in a Remedios life full of lies, even his name was fake. Originally, Arabus was a typical child from other people's families, with excellent character and academic performance, and a bright future. And now this guy who calls himself Arabus killed the real Arabus, took away his identity and name, and used it to infiltrate the priest class, and finally successfully infiltrated the Space Marines, becoming the most trusted lieutenant of the Primarch Lorgar. In the original timeline, he induced the corruption of the Primarch Horus and planned the Horus heresy and many atrocities that followed. However, given the huge number of people he indirectly killed, he can be called the #1 mortal in Warhammer 40k. When it comes to evil and darkness, the most vicious thoughts and cruel deeds in the Great Tomb seem as innocent as a child's joke compared to Arabus. Although Arabus has not yet started his series of dark deeds, he has already become an irredeemable bastard. He was just waiting for an opportunity and accumulating strength. To Arabus, doing evil was only a question of whether he could do it or not, never a question of why. Even if he was temporarily free from the influence of the subspace, it would not change the fact that Arabus was a pure rotten person. Of course, Ins didn't care about this. To him, it was just an elite monster that looked more elite than ordinary space marines that suddenly stopped them from nowhere, and chased them to this world without giving up, and even used a prop that could block the transfer. Faced with this situation, Ins used the Shigeza move without hesitation. "I'm sorry, can you please let us go? I'm sure there will be a valuable gift for you later." Ins said this and bowed to the ground. Arabus was not a person who would be dragged down by a mere plea for mercy. Although Arabus did not know what Ins had done before, it did not affect his calm acceptance of Ins kneeling while he opened fire with the large melta-gun in his hand. In Ins' memory, Shigeza was one of his special attack skills against strong opponents. As long as you suddenly kneel down and beg for mercy in the lowest possible manner, most of the strong men will immediately lose interest, and the rest will also show emotions of surprise and annoyance. However, this was the first time Ins had seen someone attack without a care in the world. Ins, who had fallen to his knees, had a backup plan, but the attack was too fast for him to react. Albedo, who had been observing the enemy, immediately grabbed Ins and dragged him to the back, leaving a hole where Ins had been kneeling, melted by the high temperature. Then Ins immediately activated the teleport skill, trying to increase the distance, but the affected area of the force field was too small. Ins only increased the distance a little and did not get out of the range at all. Arabus launched another attack with a grim smile. Melta weapons are extremely powerful and can fire continuously, so the damage is too great to take directly. But this time, Albedo took out a red shield carved into the shape of a dragon head, and instantly put on a set of gorgeous samurai-style armor, which was an artifact-level equipment left behind by other players from Nazarick. In order to deal with possible special situations, Ins took out a lot of equipment left by his former companions and carried it with him at all times. Before escaping, he gave some equipment to Albedo to deal with emergencies. The shield, which was specially strengthened for fire attributes, had a high resistance to melta weapons, allowing Albedo to block the first round of shooting from Arabus. At this time, Ins also changed his equipment. His original black bachelor's suit was replaced by a beautiful white armor that looked like a paladin's equipment, and he had a gorgeous golden red bow in his hand. Ins' MP was running low, and judging that it would be difficult to continue fighting as a mage, Ins used the perfect warrior's magic on himself. This skill was also used when executing Shaltir. The effect was to change all of his occupational levels from mage to warrior, but he could not directly gain skills. In fact, he was just a level 100 blank warrior, much weaker than an ordinary level 100 warrior. The advantage is probably that you can use all warrior equipment. It is a last-ditch effort for mage players when they are close to each other or their MP is exhausted, or it can be used simply to make life more fun. Now Ins is wearing Takamai's armor and using Pepelagano's artifact-level long-range weapon, Hou Bao. Arabus reacted quickly. He activated the teleportation device in his scepter and appeared directly behind Ins. The scepter in his hand, which represented his status as the chief priest, was about to fall and hit Ins on the head. At this time, Arabus found that something was wrong under his feet, so he immediately activated the teleportation device again. However, the space inside the force field was small, and even after activating the teleportation device again, Arabus was unable to get far away from Ins and the others. Although she successfully dodged Hou's bow, a huge fist with spikes appeared in Albedo's right hand. This was also an artifact-level equipment left behind by the player, known as the Teacher's Iron Fist. Arabus tried to dodge, but was distracted by Ins' new equipment and could only take a solid punch from Albedo. Arabus was knocked flying, tumbling over and flying out, only stopping when he hit the boundary of the force field. Ins and Albedo were both stunned for a moment. After the great battle outside, they had subconsciously imagined the elite units of the human empire to be extremely powerful. But when we actually fought each other, we discovered Arabus's true level. It's not that he wasn't strong, but he didn't seem as powerful as we had imagined. Arabus stood up, furious at the attack just now. At this time, Ins Hou's bow shot again, and Albedo continued to swing her iron fists and fought Arabus with the attitude of dying together. Facts have proved that without the blessing of chaos, Arabus's true level is not much stronger than that of an ordinary space marine. Under the desperate attacks of Ins and Albedo, Arabus was finally beheaded by Ins with his Takamai's white scimitar, and the isolation field was also lifted. It turns out that Arabus died today. After coming out of the isolation field, Ins saw the Eldar clowns constantly throwing things together, as if they were forming a magic circle to summon some existence. Chapter 76. Cain's Incarnation. The Eldar are the next cosmic overlords of the Milky Way after the Necrons and the Old Ones. They were once extremely powerful. In their heyday, even the human empire when the Emperor of Man was still walking on Earth pales in comparison. The Eldar were so powerful and strong, but in the days when they had no worries at home and no enemies abroad, the Eldar chose to indulge themselves completely. After tens of thousands of years of extreme indulgence, a powerful being of destruction was born in the depths of the warp. Called the youngest lady by the Eldar, she is also known as the Prince of Pleasure, or most commonly, Slaanesh. When Slaanesh was born, it devoured the souls of most of the Eldar and destroyed and absorbed the gods of the Eldar. Only 3 of the gods were spared. One is the laughing god Zigakai, the only Eldar god who escaped unscathed from Slaanesh. The other is the Eldar goddess of life, snatched from the chamber of Slaanesh by the loving father Nurgle himself. Now the Eldar goddess of life has become the wife of the benevolent father Nurgle. The benevolent father loves his wife, and he lets the goddess of life stay next to his cauldron. Every time he has a new idea or cooks a new plague, he lets the goddess of life taste it first. The loving father will happily observe the changes, and then spread the plague on the mortal world. And the kind goddess will quietly pass on the cure to the mortal world when Nurgle is not paying attention. And Nurgle acquiesced in this petty tactic. The last and the most miserable one is Cain, the god of war of the Eldar. He is the god of war, the god of courage and the god of murder of the Eldar. To put it simply, it is an Eldar version of Cain. As Slaanesh devoured all of the Eldar gods, Cain was shattered into thousands of pieces that were scattered across the galaxy. As long as the Eldar are willing to pay enough, they can summon the incarnation of Cain through the fragments of the god of war. Although the incarnation summoned by this fragment is just a large stepping stone, it is not used under normal circumstances. When the time comes to fight with Cain's incarnation, it will not be of much use. After all, Lorgar can beat Cain's incarnation in a one-on-one fight. But that was when there was only one fragment. Now the Harlequins have piled up hundreds of Cain's fragments, without the interference of the warp. The Eldar god of war Cain is resurrected. Part. Hundreds of fragments attracted each other under the ceremony performed by the Eldar Harlequins, bursting into a light brighter than the sun. The fragments flew into the air, and powerful psychic lightning flashed between them. Under the influence of the psychic arcs, the fragments began to melt and combine together bit by bit. At first, there was a figure taller than the Eldar war titan, and then golden red flames and lightning began to fill in his details. It is a set of luxurious armor with a golden base and decorated with a large number of blade-like objects. Behind the golden red face shield is a pair of red eyes burning with violence and bloodthirsty desire. Cain, the powerful god of war of the Eldar, completed his first small-scale gathering in another world since his shattering. The clowns knelt down in unison to the god of war Cain. Although they, as followers of the god of laughter Tzeentch, did not believe in Cain, but as one of the few remaining gods of the Eldar and now he was needed to hold the line, the clowns did not mind paying their utmost respect to him. Cain raised the sword in his hand and roared loudly, venting his unwillingness and anger. Under the huge spiritual energy, even the sun in the distant sky produced visibly agitated vibrations. After roaring for dozens of seconds, Cain finally vented his anger, then turned around and headed in the opposite direction of the portal. Just as Cain was about to launch a victorious attack to the rear, an invisible chain appeared around his neck. An expression of pain and surprise immediately appeared on Cain's face. "Tzeentch, what have you done to me?" One of the kneeling clowns let out a shrill laugh. He took off his mask, revealing another face that looked like a mask. His face was like a crescent moon, and his chin and nose were long and pointed, enough to hurt people. It turns out that the god of laughter Tzeentch has two incarnations. One is outside to cover for the clown, and the other enters another world and summons the god of war Cain together with other clowns. "Oh my god, Cain, you really disappoint me. As a god of war, you actually chose to escape." The incarnation of Tzeentch smiled and said in an extremely sarcastic tone. "Maybe you should change your name to Pony God." "Tzeentch, stop it. Now that we have come to this new universe, there is no need for us to fight those guys to death." The god of war Cain struggled hard, but Tzeentch had done something to him when he was resurrected. Although he tried hard to move forward, his body continued to approach the portal in a spacewalk. "It's really ugly, Cain. Can't you just die for the future of your race?" "Tzeentch. You're crazy. In this new world, new universe, we have countless opportunities. We are just the Eldar. As long as we grow and develop here, we can find countless slaves. It seems that you have fallen completely. Never mind, let me take over." As he spoke, Tzeentch's incarnation jumped onto the body of the god of war Cain, and then dissolved into the body of the god of war. "Do not!" Cain let out a violent scream, then lost control of his body and strode towards the portal. By this time, Ens and Albedo had already fled. Although Ens wanted to take Arabus's body back with him, escaping was more important, so he just left it there. Now Cain's big foot stepped directly on Arabus, and Arabus suddenly became Arabus sauce. Cain rushed out of the portal, and opposite him was Scarbrand who was fighting with the great daemon of Slaanesh. Cain raised the sword burning with golden red flames in his hand and slashed at the great daemon of Slaanesh first. It was a not-so-remarkable Slaanesh daemon. The battle with Scarbrand was already too much for him to handle, and now Cain's joining in would take his life in an instant. Scarbrand was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously distanced himself. Cain? Scarbrand asked doubtfully. The guy in front of him indeed has the aura of Cain, the former Eldar god of war. Although not as powerful as he was in his heyday, he is definitely not a match for any mortal being. However, this guy who looked like the Eldar god of war Cain seemed to have some other aura mixed in his body. Scarbrand didn't understand this. In his eyes, God Cain was now just a strange, patchwork monster full of mysteries. But Scarbrand immediately reacted and realized that it didn't matter who the opponent was. He actually chose to retreat when facing the enemy, which was absolutely not allowed. The great blood god Cain can allow forbearance for the sake of war. Sneak attacks or assassinations may be permitted. But Cain would never allow cowardice. Realizing that he had been cowardly for a moment, Scarbrand became even more angry. He rushed towards Cain, waving the two axes in his hands. Chapter 77. Cain vs. Scarbrand. Scarbrand rushed up again with even greater rage and power. In order to cope with the size of Cain's avatar, Scarbrand also changed his size during the charge, becoming the same size as Cain. He raised his two axes high, and the two axes that had once been blessed by Cain chopped down at the incarnation of Cain with the power to literally split mountains and crack the earth. Cain raised the sword in his hand and confronted Scarbrand. When the weapons of both sides collided, there was a sudden burst of dazzling white light, followed by a huge shock wave that directly crushed all the creatures around, and then there was a deafening roar. Scarbrand retreated 8 steps in a row. In the sword fight, Scarbrand was no match for the extremely powerful incarnation of Cain. Then he swung his double axes forward again, but Cain did not fight him this time. Instead, he dodged Scarbrand's attack like a clown, and then slashed Scarbrand's body with the single-edged sword in his hand, creating a huge wound, and molten blood gushed out of the wound. Scarbrand attacked again, but was still easily dodged by Cain, and another huge wound appeared on Scarbrand's body. Although as a great daemon of Cain, in this place where the warp is about to be torn into a mess, he can directly use the power of the warp to strengthen himself and heal his wounds, but how can the sword of the god of war Cain be an ordinary item? The wound created by Cain healed extremely slowly, and the golden red flames attached to it continued to affect Scarbrand's recovery. Scarbrand didn't care about the recovery speed of his wounds. He drove his body, which had begun to become sluggish, to fight Cain again. But this time, Cain simply slashed with the single-edged sword in his hand to block the attack of the already sluggish Scarbrand. Then he touched Scarbrand with his other hand, and a rose-like flower appeared on Scarbrand's chest. The next moment, bright red blossomed, and countless threads from the highest heaven filled Scarbrand's body, crushing every one of his muscles. The pain was so intense that even Scarbrand, who had devoted countless years to the war, could not help but scream. After casually killing another Slaanesh daemon who came to cause trouble, Cain grabbed Scarbrand's face with one hand, lifted him high, and pushed him into the portal. Here, you will die forever. Cain issued a death declaration, and now Scarbrand was helpless. Although the surrounding Cain armies and other demonic forces wanted to stop him, they were all blocked by Harlequin and other Eldar forces. Ever since Cain's incarnation appeared on the battlefield, the morale of the Eldar seemed to be locked. Scarbrand was pushed towards a portal emitting a pale blue light. He endured unimaginable pain. The battle axe in his hand had long since fallen out of his hand. Scarbrand then used his fists to strugglingly hit the incarnation of Cain again and again. 1, 2, 3 times. The soft and weak fist had no effect on the visor of Cain's incarnation. Although Scarbrand was still struggling hard, his body was being pushed into the portal inch by inch. It is a completely new world there. Without the 4 gods of the warp, once you die there, you are truly dead and there will be no chance of rebirth from the warp. 4, 5, 6. Scarbrand's arm had long been broken, muscles shattered, and even nerves were mashed into pieces. Although the warp demon has no real entity in the body it usually uses as a convenient form molded from the energy of the warp, there are still limits. In theory, Scarbrand should have reached the limit of his body's endurance long ago and could not fight back. The 7th hit, most of Scarbrand's body was pushed into the portal, leaving only 1/3 of his upper body that was barely waving his fists. Scarbrand still looked directly at Cain, and his counterattack did not stop. Oh, great blood god, please witness my final battle. 8th. Scarbrand launched his 8th attack, still weak and useless. But after this punch, Scarbrand felt what he had been dreaming about, what he had longed for countless years. That's what I've been losing since I was exiled. That is his most important thing. That is his everything. He was once the most powerful and beloved warrior under the Blood God. Now Scarbrand has successfully regained Cain's favor with his courage, even more than before. The enormous blessing from Cain brought endless benefits to Scarbrand. He stretched out his arms and grabbed Cain's arms, then began to walk out inch by inch. Finally, Scarbrand came out of the portal. The blessing of Cain on him was so strong that it almost became a physical entity. Scarbrand laughed loudly and stretched out his hands, and 2 huge battle axes appeared directly in his hands. Scarbrand laughed out loud. The great blood god finally recognized him and accepted him again. The grievances of many years were finally released at this moment. Scarbrand decided that he must offer the best head to Cain in this battle, and the head of Cain's incarnation might be a good choice. Scarbrand rushed forward with a loud laugh. His body now not only possessed the surging power bestowed by Cain, but also possessed martial arts from another world. These martial arts had been modified by Cain himself and now passed on to Scarbrand. Another sword fight, this time it was Cain who took a step back. What followed was an attack that integrated multiple martial arts from another world. 8 powerful slashes were launched at the same time, almost blocking any escape direction for the incarnation of the god of war Cain. Even though Cain's figure was as ghostly as a ghost, he could only choose to take 2 of the attacks. Cain adjusted the angle of the attack and tried to use the strongest part of the armor to block Scarbrand's conversion of 8 light slash. This time, Cain's incarnation was not seriously injured, but he no longer fought with Scarbrand and chose to maneuver at high speed. Scarbrand was chasing after the incarnation of Cain from behind, occasionally using some powerful martial arts that had been transformed by Cain. Cain fought and retreated, no longer as arrogant as before. But in fact, Scarbrand did not notice that Cain had a frivolous smile on his face behind the mask. Cain's incarnation led Scarbrand to various places where there were many demons, especially places where there were many Slaanesh demons, using Scarbrand's attacks to weaken the demons and create opportunities for more Eldar to enter the portal. As for Scarbrand, he soon discovered the purpose of Cain's incarnation, but he didn't care. He was just chopping anyway, so it didn't matter if he killed a few others. Chapter 78. The Gathering Green Tide. Just as all the forces surrounding the portal were desperately escalating their efforts and the fight was becoming difficult to resolve, another force in the galaxy was just beginning to notice this dispute. Orcs, or simply call them greenskins, orcs, are an extremely important force that cannot be missing in the Warhammer world. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are the only truly happy race in the dark and crazy Warhammer world. These orcs are racially classified as a kind of oversized half-biological, half-plant creature that can walk, bite people, and use my method to rub a bunch of garbage into high-tech weapons and then whack a mushroom in your face. The origin of the orcs is said to be biological weapons created by the ancient saints to fight against the Necrons. The powerful technological power is directly engraved in their DNA. The Emperor once called the greenskins the cancer of the galaxy, because if a greenskin appeared anywhere, then greenskins would be everywhere. The technology that the Old Ones engraved into the greenskins' DNA ensured that the greenskins would never have a technological gap when facing their enemies. Although the weapons and equipment of the greenskins may be a bunch of stuff made from garbage and have no stability at all, their technical level is at a hopelessly low level. And precisely because these things can be made entirely of garbage, the greenskins can always pull out a large number of various equipment, using quantity to make up for the lack of stability. The psychology of these crazy green things has been adjusted by the spirit of the ancient saints. The greenskins love fighting the most. For the greenskins, nothing is more exciting than fighting. Fighting is the greenskins' basic need. In the end, the greenskins' Wadaic energy connected them together, not only avoiding the corruption from the subspace, the surging Wadaic energy would also directly bring various benefits to the greenskins. The more greenskins there are, the stronger the Wadaic energy, and the stronger the Wadaic energy, the stronger and smarter the greenskins will be. These conditions combined make the greenskins the most successful biological weapon created by the Old Ones. Fortunately, due to the warlike nature of the orcs, when there is a lack of opponents, they will immediately start killing each other to vent their insatiable desire for battle. But there is another problem. When the orcs in the infinite internal circulation really produce a very big and very bad orc who can defeat all opponents, the war boss is born. The orcs will unite and begin to expand outward. Sometimes with the right external conditions, or simply because some great master thinks about it for a moment, the orcs will begin their space journey, and then countless planets will suffer because of it. In the Warhammer 40k era, although orcs are still everywhere, constantly causing chaos and disasters, the most powerful warboss among them, the Bonebreaker, can only fight back and forth with a powerful regiment of dismembered space marines. Compared with the greenskin forces that still exist now, he is a lovely young man. In today's era, there are two extremely powerful green-skinned orc forces. One is centered on the planet Olaner and is the most powerful orc empire discovered in the Milky Way. The Emperor personally led Horus to destroy the Orc Empire, and because of his contribution in destroying the Orc Empire, Horus was finally promoted to War Master. Another group is called the Beast, located in the dark depths of the Milky Way where the Astronomicon cannot reach. They are accumulating strength, and 100 years later, when the Empire was bedridden by the Horus heresy, they launched an unprecedented greenskin invasion of the Empire. Although the Empire finally paid a huge price to eliminate the Beast, it also went from high-level paraplegia to amputation below the eyebrows. Now their most powerful war bosses located in different parts of the galaxy all raised their heads and looked in one direction of the Milky Way. At almost the same time, they felt the guidance from Goj and Moj, go there to fight. Gork Moj is a god worshipped by all greenskins, but he almost never appears in normal times. However, considering that those strange things of the greenskins can move, it is not impossible to say that Gork Moj is always appearing. But such things as explicitly appearing in front of some greenskins and giving them guidance are really rare. From 30k to 40k, only the Bonebreaker received almost illusory guidance, and then it became the greenskins' great prophet in the 40k era, the most powerful warboss. And now two warbosses that are far more powerful than Bone Crusher have received guidance from Big Bad Guy. This means only one thing, that a big Wadaik is coming that will sweep across the entire galaxy. The Orc Emperor of Olaner, because we couldn't find out what the name of this Orc super warboss was, in order to distinguish it from other warbosses, we will call it the Orc Emperor Alexander, was sitting on a mushroom chair thinking about nothing, when he suddenly let out a huge roar. Wadaik! It stood up. Its huge body was taller than the two dreadnoughts. The 6 mechanical arms behind it, carrying various deadly weapons, danced in ecstasy. I saw it. Brother Gomao told us to go in that direction. There are countless fights to be had there. Wake up the boys, wake up the bitches, call all the big guns, we're going to Wadaik. This time it's going to be a big Wadaik. Following the command of the Orc Emperor Shanda, countless war bosses and orc bosses began to move. They roared and ran wildly, spreading the good news from their second brother, Gomao, to all the Greenskin Empire's sphere of influence. The huge garbage spaceship began to take off, the battle moon was being adjusted, and the green tide that could cover an entire planet began to gather. The battle-hardened orc boys, the newly born orc boys, and all kinds of fart spirits were all ecstatic because of the good news. All kinds of loud, big, and powerful equipment were distributed free of charge by the great masters of skills. These things usually cost a lot of money to buy and are not affordable for ordinary orc boys. But now they can take one piece each. The orc boy screamed and was kicked into one spaceship after another by the boss. The great expedition of the green-skinned orcs is coming. I don't know which boss shouted it out first, but then the guys on one spaceship, and then the guys on other spaceships, all started singing along with the melody under the surging Wadaik energy field. Let's go! Let's go! We traveled across the universe. We don't know where that is. We'll make it up when we get there. The whole galaxy is afraid because we are orcs. Nothing can stop us when we move forward, because we are orcs. Let's go! Let's go! We're going across the universe, there's no end to our journey this time. We are big and strong because we are orcs. Everyone knows green is best, because we're orcs. Let's go! Let's go! Let's travel across the universe. There's no end to this. As the orcs sang, a huge Wadaik energy field appeared, large enough to be visible on the star map. On the other side, from the darkness that the star torch could not illuminate, 6 beast war bosses also gathered their troops under the will of Brother Gaomao and began to march towards the territory of the human empire. A rogue trader's cargo ship exploring the border was the first to notice something was wrong. Suddenly, countless sounds were heard from their deep space radar. After analysis, they found that these sounds all had only one meaning. That is a deafening Wadaik. Chapter 79. Emperor Demon Army. In the Emperor's personal room on the Emperor's dream. The Emperor has now removed all his disguises and is trying his best to use his vast psychic powers to intervene in the battlefield far away. Although the interference from the four gods was becoming stronger and stronger, it was becoming increasingly difficult to project new reinforcements directly into the battlefield. Although the reinforcements, including Leon Johnson, began to advance towards the battlefield desperately under the Emperor's direct use of powerful psychic energy and ignored the orders conveyed by physical isolation, it was too late. It was too late. The Emperor could feel that the dark gods of the warp valued that small world as much as he did, and the opportunity on it that could change everything. The four gods are constantly tearing apart the real space there, and pouring more and more subspace power into it. If the four gods had not held each other back, the Necrons and the Eldar would have started to use their best weapons to stop the encroachment of the warp, and the planet would have been completely dragged into the warp by now. Now the Emperor is really anxious. He is no longer pretending. If it is difficult to send new reinforcements, then he will strengthen the existing troops. The Emperor began to frequently distribute his power to the warriors who were fighting, making these warriors more courageous. Some warriors with particularly good compatibility even grew white wings on the spot and gained powerful psychic powers. Among them, the one given the most power by the Emperor was Abaddon, the captain of Horus' First Company. In this era, Abaddon had not yet become the invincible War Master of Chaos. He was still the Emperor's good grandson, dominating the battlefield and constantly destroying Chaos demons one after another. Under the infusion of the Emperor's power, golden flames first emerged from the power armor on Abaddon's hand. The demons killed by this sword will completely disappear and can never be resurrected. Then golden lightning appeared in Abaddon's eyes, and all his physical qualities increased significantly, his thinking became faster, his skills became more perfect, and even Abaddon's body size became a little bigger. But even with the infusion of the Emperor's power on this crazy battlefield, Abaddon was killed by several sudden attacks from the great demons. But the Emperor protected Abaddon's soul and used his immensely powerful psychic powers to reshape Abaddon's body. Just like that, the original Abaddon died, and now the living saint Abaddon has come again. After his rebirth, Abaddon's originally black Terminator power armor's joints shone with dazzling gold, and his power claws and power sword became as if cast in light. His body grew larger, and even without the power armor, he was 270 centimeters tall. After his rebirth, Abaddon felt the Emperor's power and love for humanity from the inside out. He shed tears of emotion, but the weapon in his hand did not stop at all and immediately strangled the demons around him. The appearance of the living saint Abaddon greatly boosted the morale of the human empire's army, while the appearance of the incarnation of the Eldar god of war also caused great interference to the demonic forces, and some troops took the opportunity to rush into the portal. It was at this moment that the Emperor felt the huge Wadaic energy fluctuations coming from the Orc Empire. Although it cannot be seen in the physical universe yet, an extremely huge Wadaic energy field covering several star systems can be found in the subspace. Even the Emperor found this situation difficult to handle. He could not delay any further and had to seize the portal immediately. Since the appearance of the huge Wadaic force field, the Emperor has clearly felt the pressure from the four gods increasing. Even if it is shared with aliens such as the Eldar or the Necrons, it must not fall into the hands of Chaos's great enemy. The Emperor still had a trump card, but if possible, he really didn't want to use it. But now, there was no chance for him to hesitate, and finally the Emperor gritted his teeth and invested in this trump card. Soon, without warning, a new force of Space Marines appeared on the battlefield. They appeared silently on the most intense battlefield. These brand new Space Marines were clad in ceramic steel armor as dark as the night. No matter where they were or how strong the fire was, it could not leave a trace of light on the surface of their power armor. Their armor was like a black hole, swallowing up the light around them. They carry no insignia of existing legions, but special patterns on their power armor form a skeleton-like pattern, which is particularly eye-catching under the dancing flames on their bodies. There seems to be some mysterious fuel flowing on those power armors, which is closely connected with the soul. Every time they swing their swords and shoot, it will be accompanied by flames from the depths of their souls. Once Chaos is attacked, it will be immediately engulfed by the flames. These warriors are silent and efficient. They refuse to communicate with other friendly forces and focus only on destroying the chaotic enemy in front of them. Their movements were extremely swift, even the most battle-hardened Space Marines were amazed by them, and they also showed great resilience. Even attacks that the heavy Terminator power armor could not withstand would not affect these warriors from continuing to fight. Various evil magics from the warp had little effect on these mysterious warriors. Sometimes when a warrior is seriously injured, he will turn himself into a pillar of fire, erupting with incredible destructive power in the last moments of his life. The name of this group of Space Marines is the Bound Legion, or they can be called the Emperor's demonic army. In essence, the nature of this unique army is similar to that of the four gods' demonic army. They are heroes who are loyal to humanity. The Emperor protects the souls of these warriors and calls them into action once again when the need arises. Although the Emperor himself was extremely resistant to this direct display of miracles, there was really no other way now. The addition of the Legion of the Damned greatly boosted the morale of the human Empire's army. Although they had no idea where this mysterious group of space marines came from, just knowing that this powerful force was a reinforcement was enough to give them peace of mind. The happiest one among them was Lorgar. The Emperor has always told Lorgar that he is not a god, but Lorgar does not believe it. How can there be such a powerful human being? Now he has confirmed and proved that the Emperor is God, and the Emperor has directly demonstrated his miracles. With the morale of the Lorgar and Word-Bearers Legion boosted, the Emperor could only decide to solve the current problem first and leave this matter to his future self. With the continuous investment of the forces on the side of order, the power of the dark gods in the warp began to be suppressed, and everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. But at this moment, all the Khurn demons suddenly launched the most frenzied attack. They did not defend at all and attacked the enemy without paying any attention to any damage. At the same time, throughout the galaxy, groups of followers of the blood god Khurn began large-scale tragic sacrifices. Chapter 80. The Devil Comes. In the spaceships in the subspace, in the bottom of the dim hive city, among the garrison troops, and inside the alien fortress. The cults in the galaxy that believed in the blood god Khurn suddenly began to make crazy sacrifices. They took up weapons and began to attack all living things they could find around them. If there were really no living things, they would end their lives by chopping off their own heads. In an instant, countless worlds in the Milky Way fell into chaos. People were either yelling wildly, killing each other, or hiding, praying not to be discovered. Some rational people are trying to suppress this crazy behavior. Among them are heroic planetary governors, dedicated military officers, battle-hardened veterans, and many just ordinary brave people. Some of them succeeded, while others fell under the axes of the blood god's followers. Given the scale of the galaxy, perhaps they will never recover from the losses and casualties caused by this mad act. After the first wave of chaos, the situation did not improve. Some evil forces successfully built a sacrificial tower with the heads of countless innocent people, and a new and greater chaos began. From every corner of the galaxy began to echo that blasphemous cry: blood sacrifice to the blood god. Skull sacrifice to the skull throne. The cultists who were stopped used themselves as sacrifices at the end of their lives, and the cultists who succeeded by chance were not satisfied with the immediate results and tried desperately to expand their attack range. They could hear the cry of the blood god Khurn. The blood god Khurn made them a promise, and the temptation from chaos suddenly intensified. All the cults of Khurn that had been lurking for who knows how many years began to make crazy sacrifices once again. Soon, a lost planet that the human empire had not yet recovered completed its first planet-wide sacrifice. Billions of humans were sacrificed to Khurn by the planet's tyrant, who was corrupted by the blood god. A storm from the high heavens swept across the planet, killing all living things on it. The other three chaos gods also discovered Khurn's actions. They began to send their believers to stop Khurn's bloody and crazy behavior. At the same time, some believers began to make equally cruel sacrifices under the orders of these evil gods. But one step too slow, and Khurn's act of overturning the table caught the other three dark gods off guard. In order to prevent the possible Great Terror, the Eldar temporarily gave up their arrogance and prejudice and began to open the webway to other races. Under the guidance of the Eldar Ark, some humans and Necrons were able to enter some hidden webways and reach the battlefield more quickly. But it was still too late. As one planet after another was sacrificed, the influence of the blood god on the battlefield was getting stronger and stronger. Originally, the corruption of the warp on the battlefield was attacked by the four gods working together, but now the other three gods have begun to unite to attack Khurn. But even though it was besieged by the three great powers of the high heaven, Khurn did not stop its erosion of the world where the portal was located. At this time, in the high heaven, in the demon realm of Khurn, countless demons began to jump into the blood pool, using their lives to provide support to the great blood god. Finally, Khurn, who had sat on the brass throne for who knows how many years, stood up. His presence is bigger than the mountains, higher than the sky. Just standing there filled the entire warp. Khurn raised his right hand high, and the power of the entire blood god realm began to gather around him. The Khurn demon soldiers still on the battlefield ended their lives without hesitation. Scarbrand laughed and chopped off his head with an axe. Then he knelt on one knee with his head in his hands and presented it to the high heaven. Ha 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 ha. At that moment, all psychers seemed to hear the sound of tearing coming from the warp. The entire sea of souls was boiling. Khurn raised his right hand high and thrust it downwards, carrying endless power and infinite terror. He came from the ancient wilderness and connected to the distant future. After who knows how many tens of thousands of years, one of the supreme gods in the subspace finally interfered directly with the physical universe in his original form again. In the Khurn realm, all the Khurn demons roared loudly, all the guns were firing, and all the war drums were beating. The forces of Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle were immediately projected in an attempt to stop Khurn. However, a huge ancient axe with infinite tyranny and endless destruction appeared in Khurn's hand. Khurn's fighting spirit was so high that the entire warp trembled under his overwhelming fighting spirit. Khurn swung his axe. Blood, rage, glory, courage, justice, fairness, revenge, war. 8 concepts were attached to the ancient axe, bringing 88 major destructions and sounding the clarion call for 888 wars. The first obstacle in front of Khurn was an endless vitality, in which the faces of countless intelligent creatures emerged, all with intoxicated smiles. But if you look closely, you will find that these faces are swollen and full of maggots, like highly decayed corpses. Thick green mist gushed out of the orifices of these creatures, forming the first barrier together with the huge flies and insects flying everywhere. The giant axe intersected with the green mist, and all the faces were ignited. They woke up from the hallucination and showed expressions of pain and fear. Then, they were all torn to pieces by the power of the blood god. The second obstacle was a beautiful painting, in which the sounds of nature were playing, beautiful dancers were dancing in the painting, and countless delicacies formed a never-ending feast. Then all of them were crushed to dust by Khurn's great axe. The third barrier is the countless knowledge and secrets. Precious parchment scrolls, ancient stone tablets, cheap printed books and other carriers of knowledge together form a high wall with no end in sight. When Khurn's giant axe hit the wall of knowledge, it first collapsed violently inward, and then was pushed upward little by the power of knowledge. Countless secret, chaotic, and crazy knowledge began to flood into Khurn's mind. Khurn laughed and raised his left hand, smashing it hard on the axe in his right hand. The wall of knowledge could no longer withstand such a huge force and was ignited by the blood flames and turned into ashes. Khurn, who had successively defeated 3 supreme gods of the warp, could not help but pay a price. Now countless tiny cracks appeared on his body, and the divine blood containing enormous power oozed out and dripped onto the ground. Some lucky bloodletters were promoted to great demons on the spot after being drenched in the divine blood. Although he was already injured, Khurn's fighting spirit did not diminish at all. His giant axe was finally free of obstacles and directly split the barrier between the physical universe and the warp. Khurn placed the axe containing endless destructive power in his left hand, stretched out his claws that were bigger than the sky, and was about to grab the planet directly into the warp. It seemed that no one could stop him. No, the Emperor is still here. At this moment the Emperor completely released his restraints on himself, and the cold golden sun in the warp expanded almost 1,000 times in a single breath. The Emperor seized the power of the warp that was so vast that it was unimaginable. The Imperial Dream, located in this vortex of power, was even like a leaf in the sea, drifting in the wind due to the warp shock caused by the Emperor. The sun in the galaxy where the portal planet is located, an ordinary star, suddenly turned golden. A sword larger than the sun, so large that it could be seen directly on the scale of the star system, stretched out from the golden star. It seems slow, but it is actually rushing towards the clutches of Khurn at an extremely fast speed. Khurn laughed so loudly that the entire universe shook. The huge battle axe appeared in his right hand again, and he went towards the golden giant sword without hesitation. The 2 weapons that pierced the sky and the earth did not produce any huge explosion or similar effects, but where the 2 weapons were in direct contact, all time, space, cause and effect, and concepts were being annihilated into complete nothingness. The instantaneous fight between the 2 sides made the Emperor shed tears of blood, and every inch of bones in his body made an ominous crackling sound. The golden sun in the warp swelled again, but Khurn's axe did not move at all and was slowly pressing down. At this time, the power of joy representing the ultimate emotion is bestowed upon the giant sword. Help comes from the power of life and eternity. The Lord of Wisdom and Change performs calculations for the Emperor. Finally, with the blessing of the 3 gods, the Emperor's golden giant sword destroyed Khurn's giant axe and rushed into the warp with unstoppable force. The enormous force split Khurn's demonic domain in half and even cut off the blood god's right wrist. As the 5 most powerful individuals competed, the vibrating warp erupted into a massive warp storm with the portal planet as its core, and all other forces trying to reach that portal were blocked. Chapter 81. Post-war situation. After successfully defeating Cain, the Emperor sat back on his throne, looking very tired. In order to defeat Cain just now, the Emperor extracted too much warp energy, and now he has to expend a lot of energy to suppress the riot of the remaining energy. And the magical Chancellor Malkador, the real second in command of the Empire and the Emperor's close friend, was reporting the latest battle situation to the Emperor. An extremely strong subspace storm has appeared in the New Hope system, tentative name. The storm is so strong that it has even affected the physical universe. Currently, no known means of entering the New Hope system can be used. It was the work of those 4 guys. If we can't get it ourselves, we must not let others get it. The Dark Gods should have been trying to accumulate strength and be ready to counterattack at any time. How much did we lose this time? We have lost direct contact with 378 planets. The Word-Bearer's flagship and Primarch Lorgar have been cut off, their lives or deaths unknown. There are too many other losses to count in such a short time. I have summarized all the intelligence that can be gathered so far. You can take a look at it when you have time. If there is any good news, it is probably that all the latent chaos cultists have emerged, making it much easier to eliminate them later. How's the psychic choir going? 7,121 people died, 935 people went crazy, basically all of them were wiped out. Replenish them as soon as possible. We may need them again soon. Give the lost psychers the treatment of heroes. The Emperor picked up the data tablet next to the table and quickly browsed through the relevant information. Then the Emperor closed his eyes and thought for a while. When the Emperor opened his eyes again, there was only determination and resolution in his eyes. Malkador, convey my orders. Article 1, the Great Crusade is halted, and the entire Empire is placed on the highest state of war readiness. All major legions, the Imperial Navy, and the Imperial Army are to be fully expanded. 2. Popularize the knowledge of the warp in stages to the Primarches, the Ministry of the Interior, the Imperial Military, and the public, and find a way to stitch the knowledge of the warp into the Imperial truth. 3. Give the Mechanic more benefits, allow them to expand the Titan core and Cybernetic core, and tell them to take out all the things they have in their bottom line. Don't hide them now. 4th, appoint Horus as the Regent of the Empire, in charge of all the affairs of the Empire. 5th, appoint Lion Johnson as the Imperial War Master. Tell him I don't want casualties. I don't care what method he uses. I just want a new hope. 6th, confer Magnus the title of Chief Think Tank of the Empire. I have approved his think tank plan. Ask him to come to Terra. The library in the palace is open to him. Then weld him to the Golden Throne. The Empire needs him now. 7th, confer the title of Protector of the Nation on Saint Jill. If anything happens to me, he will inherit the throne. My lord, is there anything else? The Emperor paused and continued, that's it for now, I'll add the rest later. Well, why is the only one who went there the unlucky kid Luochie? I haven't had time to deal with the mess in his perfect city yet, and now I'm doing it in front of him with all my strength. Plus, there's no one around him who can restrain him. I can't imagine what kind of cruel things he will do there when I contact him again. Even the Emperor couldn't help but cover his face when he thought about what might happen next. Forget it, let's just leave it at that for now, there are more important things to do. Under the personal command of the Emperor, orders affecting the operation of the entire Empire were transmitted to the entire territory of the human Empire. In the subspace webway, the Eldar fleet that arrived later found that they could not break through the newly emerged warp storm no matter what. The Eldar who failed to go to the New World gathered around the laughing god Zygakai and formed an alliance again. Physical universe, the Necron Storm King finally arrived at the scene with his army, and found that it was already over. The angry Storm King continued to pound the walls of the battleship, but the intensity of this space storm was too strong, and the Necron's technology was unable to break through it. The Storm King had no choice but to leave part of the fleet behind and contact other undead dynasties. As for the other side of the storm, as the only Primarch on the scene, Lorgar naturally became the supreme commander there, and his current mood was like oil bubbling under the bed. It was so wonderful. Although he had seen powerful beings from the warp that he had never understood before, he had also lost the chief priest Arabus, and his adoptive father Corphaeron was no longer with him. But none of these are more important than the fact that the Emperor truly demonstrated his miracles. Whether it was the teleportation across the galaxy, the sudden appearance of a large number of mysterious space marines, or the Emperor's final earth-shattering blow, they all proved that the Emperor was a god, and the Emperor had already acknowledged it. Since the Emperor is a god and I was sent here, there is no doubt that this is a test from the Emperor. That's pretty cool. As expected, he is the Father Emperor, the favorite child of the God Emperor. Before, the God Emperor had criticized his perfect city a lot, and he was worried that something might happen. Now he saw that the God Emperor's criticism was also a test. In the end, he still got the God Emperor's recognition. It turned out that one perfect city was not enough. I wanted to spread the God Emperor's glory to more worlds and build more magnificent buildings. And this is exactly what the Emperor was worried about. If the Emperor knew what Logia was thinking now, he would definitely shout, "Don't come over here." But now no one can stop Logia. Logia also began to deal with the finishing work. After the earth-shattering battle between the Emperor and Cain, everyone saw the warp storm forming above their heads and lost interest in continuing the fight. Everyone began to rush into the portal. After the psychic shock of the previous battle, the portal has now become more than 300 meters high and more than 500 meters wide. Of course, everyone will obviously not let the other side get their way. The forces of the physical universe, such as the Necrons, the Eldar, and the human empire, are mainly targeting the demons from the warp, but they do not trust each other and will open fire on each other from time to time. Among the demon forces, the Cain forces have no remaining forces except for a demon princess who ran into the portal during the battle just now as a backup. Chief demons such as Carlos and Kyogoth were also targeted during the battle and are now waiting for resurrection in the subspace. After another round of fighting, everyone finally pulled a part of the core troops to the other side of the portal. As for outside the portal, no one dared to give up except the demons. Each force left a large number of troops for protection. After the demons came into this world, they immediately dispersed and ran everywhere. After humans, the Eldar, and the Necrons came into this world, they reached a tacit understanding after a brief silence, and the three parties began to expand in three different directions. Chapter 83, Everything is ready for improvement. The former cathedral district of the Scythian theocracy. During the previous massacre of the Scythian theocracy by the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Bishop John here organized as many people as possible to resist. Although his resistance was fragile to the Great Tomb of Nazarick, which had an absolute advantage in military strength, it was precisely because of this tenacious resistance that the survivors of the theocracy waited for support from the Warhammer Empire of mankind. On June 30.890, M6 in the Warhammer world, a border exploration team from the White Scars Space Marine Legion entered this new alien world. As an adventurous exploration team that operates independently from the main force and whose main purpose is to explore the border of the human empire, this small force is very limited in both number and firepower. Although they successfully defeated the first wave of the vanguard of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, they also paid a huge price. In response to the White Scars' request for reinforcements, on June 30.890, M6, Governor Jim of the Agro world led the Agro militia to provide support. After that, they fought a brutal battle with the Great Tomb of Nazarick in just a few days, losing more than half of their personnel. During the battle, the soldiers of the human empire also forged a deep friendship with the locals of the Scythian theocracy. On June 30.890, M6, the 6th St Infantry Regiment, led by Mamiko Romanov, was invited to come to support, greatly easing the pressure of the human empire on the world. On June 30.890, M6, the Wandering Traders led by Jack arrived. On June 30.890, M6, the alien leader, the blasphemous sorcery tyrant Inzoolgaun pretended to surrender, and then used a powerful sorcery to kill a large number of Imperial personnel. After that, various high-level combat forces who had been lying in ambush entered the battlefield, and the Empire's position officially collapsed. Then Inzoolgaun led his alien army to the other side of the portal, and the fate of the gods of the subspace immediately afterwards caused a series of chain reactions, and finally led to that great melee. This was roughly the message Logia received. Now, among the people left on this side of the portal from the Empire, the largest number were the ones brought by Jack. They had dispersed to explore the outside world, and were now rushing back after receiving the news. The only surviving Cotter-level personnel were the White Scars Space Marine Barn, who had been fighting hard, and Jim, the governor of the planet Agro, and the mechanical priest Alpha 001, who had been doing research behind the cathedral area and had not come out even though the area in front of the cathedral was destroyed. Bishop John, who had a say in the local area, was fortunate enough to still be alive. Now these people are in the part behind the church that was not destroyed by the war, waiting to report to Lorgar. Lorgar first comforted and encouraged Barn on behalf of Chagatai Khan, the Primarch of the White Scars, and recognized his contributions to the human empire during this period. Although he was not his own Primarch, Barn was very happy to be recognized by the other Primarches. After that, he communicated with Father Alpha 001. Lorgar carefully read the data he submitted about local magic during this period of time. Although the time was too short and the research that could be done was too little, it was still of great help to the future direction. Afterwards, Lorgar asked about the situation of the STC template, confirmed that the template was currently intact, praised the priest a few words, and then asked Father Alpha 001 to find his mentor. Regarding Governor Jim of the planet Agaro, Lorgar knew that the troops he brought were almost completely lost, and even his only daughter was killed. Lorgar first praised the contribution of the planet Agaro represented by Jim to the Empire, and made promises for the future development of the planet Agaro. Finally, there is John, the original bishop of the six great gods. Although Bishop John was a native of the alien world, he also knew about the transcendent status of the Primarch in the human empire through various means. In particular, when he heard that the Primarch in front of him, who was as majestic as a giant, was the author of the words of the Emperor and the son of the true God walking the world, whether the faith of the six gods could be preserved depended on the other party's words. Bishop John, who had long disregarded life and death, was more terrified than ever at this moment. He did not even dare to look up at the Son of God. Lorgar picked up a set of the classic teachings of the six gods and quickly flipped through them. The Primarch's extraordinary memory and intelligence allowed Lorgar to finish the book in less than 2 seconds, and then another book. In this way, it only took Lorgar a few minutes to finish reading all the classics of the six gods. After reading this, Lorgar gently said to the extremely humble bishop from another world, "I have understood your teachings. The idea of the supremacy of humans that your six gods have created is good, but some of the details still need to be modified." "Ah, yes, thank the great Son of God." Upon hearing that he was recognized, Bishop John fell to the ground in excitement. "First of all, it's about status. I have no intention of erasing the contributions that the six gods you mentioned have made to the survival of mankind in this world, but the true God of mankind is only the Emperor, so the idea of the six gods should be abandoned, and they should be downgraded to saints in the future. But this god of death, your book says he is a skeleton? An undead? Although our empire does not reject skeletons, after all, a skull without mutations is a symbol of purity, but it is still a bit extreme to say that it is just a skeleton. Sir, the Deathly Hallows are actually just great wizards wearing robes decorated in the shape of skulls." Seeing that the terrible belief in the god of death might be directly abolished, John quickly interrupted. "Oh, is that so? Haha, that's not impossible. Then you should read more of the Emperor's word. As the earliest naturalized human in this world, if you perform well, it's not impossible for you to become the bishop of this world." "Yes, thank you very much." John kowtowed again, and Lorgar stood up and walked outside. Looking at the church area that has become a ruin, looking at the human armies coming and going everywhere, the elite space marines, the powerful super heavy tanks, and the mountain-like titans have all come to this world. It's a pity that the spaceships still can't come, but the shuttles used for transportation between planets and planetary orbits have already arrived. I also looked at this completely new world and new universe that had never been developed before. The time has come to expand, and begin by building a statue worthy of the God Emperor. The new world also needs new beliefs, and only the God Emperor can save these lost humans. At the same time, we also have to explore this place. There is not only this planet, but there are who knows how many worlds there are in this vast star field. Now we can spread the faith of the God Emperor in this world and in countless worlds thereafter. This time, I will definitely get the approval of the God Emperor. Chapter 84, The Gloomy Tomb. The deepest room on the 5th floor of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. This is the glacier area belonging to Cocytus, with extremely low temperatures all year round. Now Demiurge is also under house arrest here. Although he was under house arrest, Demiurge was treated very well. He was just not allowed to leave the deepest room, which was about 50 square meters. It contained basic daily necessities and many books. Even though Demiurge did not need to eat, 3 meals a day were still delivered on time by servants. Demiurge could also get various food and drinks at any time if needed. In the past few days, Demiurge has been thinking about how to prove himself and how to help the Great Tomb of Nazarick deal with the problems that may arise next. Today, Demiurge's thoughts were interrupted as he sensed a strange atmosphere. Its room had windows, allowing for observation outside. Demiurge had previously seen an army of high-ranking servants gathered inside the tomb. But now these senior servants have not been seen returning. Although the 5th floor itself is deserted, it now seems even more empty and lonely. The 4 taciturn snow girls standing guard outside the room stopped talking completely at some point. The servant who came to deliver the meal also had a solemn expression on his face, as if he was thinking about something. Demiurge called out to the servant. This is a very common humanoid insect servant of the 5th level, about level 40, and has no name of its own. What happened? I'm sorry, Master Demiurge, I can't tell you that. The servant replied carefully that although Demiurge was under house arrest, he was still the guardian of the class created by the Supreme Being, and before the Supreme Being deprived him of his identity, he was still in existence that the servants summoned through props or mechanisms had to look up to. In response to Demiurge's questions, the servant answered very humbly, but refused to reveal any useful information. Damn it, what's going on? Everyone's reactions are wrong. Wait. Is Insama in danger? Thinking of the worst possibility, Demiurge immediately rushed to the window and reached out to grab the servant who was delivering food outside. At this time, the 4 snow maidens moved. This humanoid monster dressed in kimono and looking like a beautiful woman is actually Cocytus's guard, with a level over 80. Although the 4 snow maidens were unable to stop Demiurge, they were enough to hold him back for a short period of time while waiting for reinforcements. Now the 4 snow maidens came to the window together and stopped Demiurge's hand. Damn it! Damn it! Forget about everything else, can you at least tell me how Lordans is doing? I beg you. Demiurge said this, then he took 3 steps back and bowed at a 90-degree angle toward the outside of the window. Faced with Demiurge's humble attitude, the servants seemed a little overwhelmed. Finally, the 4 snow maidens looked at each other, and the leader stood up and said, Master Demiurge, we are under the orders of Master Ins. We cannot reveal any information from the outside world to you. This is Master Ins's order. The snow woman placed emphasis on Insama. Great, Lord Ins is all right. I feel relieved. I feel relieved. Demiurge, who understood the other party's signal, breathed a sigh of relief, and then began to think about the situation at hand. However, due to the lack of too much key information, his thinking was doomed to be fruitless. The Great Tomb of Nazarick, the throne room on the 10th floor originally, this was the place where Ins, the Supreme Being, and the Guardians held meetings, but now even this place was filled with an ominous atmosphere. Servants kept coming in and out, piling up a huge hill of gold coins on the ground. Every servant who came and went had a sad look on his face. Ins was still sitting on his throne. If it weren't for the fact that his skull face couldn't show any expression, it would have looked uglier than crying. The losses this time were too great, hundreds of high-level servants over level 60 were wiped out in this battle. The Arabus, a world-class item, was taken away. Counting the previously stolen mountain and river state map, the Great Tomb of Nazarick has lost 2 world-class items. None of the class guardians, except Albedo, came back alive. Among them, Mare's condition was the strangest. Looking at Mare's ever-changing condition in the system bar, Ins really couldn't imagine what Mare was going through now. The system bar also showed that Shaltir was alive, but Ins had no idea what was going on with Shaltir. He was afraid that she would call him through the network, so he didn't contact Shaltir at all. However, considering that the last time Ins saw Shaltir, it was impaled on a spear as a sacrifice, it is obviously in danger now. The remaining Sebastian, Cocytus, Aura, and Pandora are all dead. The Angsua star cluster that followed was also completely destroyed. Oh, the loss is heavy. To directly revive 4 level 100 NPCs and a large number of high-level units, the money is far more than the wealth Ins has collected in the other world. Many years of savings are gone in an instant. Now the Great Tomb of Nazarick has officially entered the era of living off its past wealth. Although the guild has accumulated a lot of wealth during the gaming era, it cannot withstand a few more turmoils like this. Ins kept muttering to himself as he started the resurrection ceremony. The ocean of gold coins that originally covered the ground began to melt, and then gathered together to form units one after another. After a brief period of confusion after their resurrection from the dead, Sebastian, Cocytus, Pandora, and Aura officially returned to the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Aura searched the throne room several times but could not find any trace of her brother Mare, which made her come up with a very undesirable guess. Aura asked Ins very carefully. Insama, has Mare been sent out on a mission by you? Aura's voice was very soft, and she kept her head down while speaking, with her pair of elf-like pointed ears drooping, for fear of hearing a negative answer from Ins. Ins originally wanted to comfort Aura, but the scene reminded him of how his guildmates had left him one after another. Forced calm was triggered, and after regaining his composure, Ins told Aura the truth he knew. We may have lost Mare. Aura burst into tears. Ins consoled her and she finally stopped crying. However, she continued to sob in a corner. Let's think about what to do next. This time we are facing an unprecedentedly strong enemy. Even the world-class bosses look cute in comparison to them. After he finished speaking, Ins looked at everyone. Honestly, without Demiurge coming out to support him, Ins felt like something was missing. We should fight with all our might until the very end. After a brief silence, Cocytus spoke first, speaking like a typical warrior who valued honor more than life. However, Ins did not want to fight an unbeatable opponent. Perhaps we can draw on the wisdom of the Golden Princess. The Golden Princess Lanater Chardon Lair Vansafe made a significant contribution to the Great Tomb during the destruction of the kingdom, so the Great Tomb rewarded this naturally sick witch and gave her the props to transform her race. It transformed her from a human into a demon, and also gave her a status equivalent to that of a class guardian in the Great Tomb. Of course, it was only a status equivalent to that of a class guardian, but she actually had no real power. The so-called guardian only had one room in her territory. Sebastian hated this former princess who betrayed her father, brother, and country, but even he had to admit that the Golden Princess was the most intelligent person he had met in the Great Tomb of Nazarick so far. They are not trustworthy. Right now, the Great Tomb of Nazarick is facing a crisis of life and death. Such people can be used but cannot be completely trusted. Ins gave his comments, and then after listening to the suggestions of several other NPCs, Ins made up his mind. They completely contracted the Great Tomb's defenses, built a fake Great Tomb of Nazarick to draw attention, and actively prepared for war, but were ready to flee at any time. Chapter 85, Various Forces in Action. The Platinum Dragon King is one of the most powerful Dragon Kings in the Otherworld and one of the few who has a chance of defeating the player head-on. Now the Platinum Dragon King is using various reconnaissance methods to detect the outside world in confusion. Just a while ago, the sun outside suddenly showed irregular rhythms, or to ordinary people, this was just a sudden change in the brightness of the sun, but the Platinum Dragon King had astronomical concepts. The sudden change in the appearance of the sun was completely unreasonable, and most importantly, he also felt a similar aura from this world. Some being is releasing an aura powerful enough to affect the sun. Player, world-class props, although the origin magic is powerful, there is no one who can achieve this. The most likely person to do this is a player who possesses world-class items. But is this really possible? Although the world class is very strong, and there is even a completely unreasonable super powerful world item called 20, it is theoretically impossible to do such a thing. That's a star. Even if it only resonates with a star for a very short period of time, the horror contained underneath is unimaginable. The Platinum Dragon King pondered and thought hard, and also tried his best to mobilize his spies outside to collect intelligence for him. Then he learned from the report that some strange forces suddenly began to appear all over the world and began to conquer with unimaginable power. It turns out to be a player. In addition to the Sorceress Kingdom, other player forces have also arrived. Moreover, the scale of this event is unprecedented, and it is very likely that the most powerful world-class props will be carried. Although he didn't understand why the other party wanted to influence the sun, and what capabilities that world-class item had, it was undoubtedly the most powerful type he had ever encountered. The situation this time seems to be more dangerous than during the time of the 8 Desire Kings 400 years ago. What should we do in this situation? Can you win? No, I will win. A powerful force with only one player is the most difficult to deal with, but if there are multiple player forces at the same time, they will fight among themselves and kill each other. Although it is difficult to unite relatively weak forces to defeat the strongest existence, there is still hope of victory. We can't stay behind the scenes anymore. Under the current circumstances, we have to strengthen our connections with all parties whether we like it or not. Baja's Empire. Flutter was living like a god these past few days. The new teacher is completely different from the stingy magic kingans. The ceremony he bestowed upon him contains countless precious magical knowledge. Even if you don't understand something, you can communicate with the book directly. This is a wise magic book. It will guide you step by step and tell you the truth of the world in the most understandable way. In these few short days, Flutter felt that he had gained more than in the previous 100 years of his life combined. If his new teacher had not asked him to spread knowledge, Flutter would not have been willing to leave his magic book for a moment. But since it was the teacher's request, he had no choice but to do it. Since officially joining INS, Flutter has stopped teaching, and the translation of the Japanese setting collection given by INS has directly occupied all of Flutter's energy. Now that Flutter had resumed teaching, he naturally immediately attracted a large number of young people who were interested in magic or wanted to climb the career ladder through magic, including Flutter's former disciples. Although Flutter himself seemed a little impatient and indifferent during the reopened class, anyone with a little knowledge of magic could feel how shocking what Flutter said was. A complete formula system that is enough to subvert the old magical worldview, an interpretation of the essence of magic, and a brand new magical thinking. These things can change the world if released, and now Flutter talks about them casually as if they are free. Finally, one of the apprentices couldn't help but ask a question that everyone was curious about. "Teacher, is this all the knowledge the Sorcerer King imparted to me?" "Sorcerer King?" Flutter gave a mocking laugh. "Is it worthy? It is nothing but an arrogant immortal. The true god of magic has given me enlightenment and given me 9 ways to explore the truth, 9 paths leading to the door of knowledge." Flutter raised his hands and shouted excitedly, and the third eye behind his head also opened in excitement. "This! Teacher, that!" The apprentice was startled by Flutter's sudden outburst, and he subconsciously pointed out the window, meaning to be careful of the Sorcerer King's spies. "Why should I be afraid? This is a gift from the true god of magic. It is the true master of magic who ordered me to spread knowledge. What can a small, usurping undead do?" Flutter smiled, and he casually demonstrated an 8th-tier anti-detection magic to his apprentices, and deliberately prolonged each casting process. Original by Jiankai, with excellent quality. Soon the students were attracted by this gorgeous magic. As the class progressed, the belief in Tzeentch began to spread rapidly among all the magicians in the Bahaz Empire. Kingdom Karn Village. As a human settlement that had surrendered to the Bone King early on, Karn Village not only successfully avoided the massacre by the army of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, but also reaped a great deal of benefits from the destruction of the kingdom. The wealth and land of other surrounding villages now belong to Karn Village, so there is no need to worry about not having enough people to farm. The goblin army is full of good farmers, and with the help of low-level undead skeletons provided by the Great Tomb of Nazarick, the land in Karn Village is now hundreds of times more than before. Without the pressure of life, the villagers of Karn Village have greatly increased their desire to have children in the past 2 years. Now, there are a large number of new births in Karn Village every year. Everyone has a happy face and everyone praises the kindness and generosity of the Magic King in Zoulgaun. I just don't know, when the army of the human empire arrives, how many people will be truly innocent. Henry Emmert, the former simple and kind-hearted village girl, the new mayor of Karn Village, the general of the goblin army, and In's own daughter as she is known to readers, instinctively feels bad about this kind of thing. But since most of the villagers were happy, there was nothing she could do. But recently something seemed to have changed around her. General Henry couldn't tell what it was, but she could feel that the atmosphere was different. She didn't know when it started, but she never saw the maids from the Sorceress Kingdom again, and the originally developed city of Irantel also began to be completely closed. In this uneasy atmosphere, General Henry was helpless. She could only ask the Goblin Legion to do a better job of guarding and then reduce the expansion range of Karn Village. This action was strongly opposed by the villagers. They were unwilling to give up the land they had already obtained, and they did not believe that anything could threaten them who were protected by the Magic Kingdom. However, the most powerful and violent goblin army in Karn Village only follows the leadership of General Enli. The villagers' opposition had no effect, and General Enli easily suppressed all the voices of opposition. However, General Enli's reputation changed from a hero in the village to a coward. The villagers who used to greet her enthusiastically began to ignore her, avoid her, and curse her behind her back. General Enli felt very wronged, but there was nothing she could do. She could only hide away and cry secretly at night when she was alone. Ancient Kingdom of Imperia. This was once a prosperous human kingdom, but 200 years ago, because of the Rotten Coffin Dragon King's act of collecting souls, all the people, including the royal family, turned into soulless zombies. Only Princess Kino Facilia Inbaran survived because of her special innate abilities, but she was also transformed from a human into a vampire. Later, he was regarded as the culprit for the destruction of the country. Now, after hundreds of years of depression, Kainyo has walked out of the shadow of the past. Under the pseudonym Evil Eye, she has become a member of the Kingdom's Steel-level adventurers. Some time ago, when Ins launched a devastating attack on the kingdom, in order to save the lives of her teammates, she returned to the ancient country with them. After 100 years of absence, this place looks much more dilapidated. After more than 200 years, the number of people who have become undead on the streets has decreased a lot, but you can still see a few from time to time. Their clothes are torn, and the flesh underneath has become tattered under the ravages of time. Some zombies have even lost the ability to move and can only collapse on the roadside or in collapsed houses, moving their mouths lifelessly. These zombies will not attack Evil Eye or anyone around her, but if she encounters a zombie that has completely lost its ability to move, Evil Eye will stop and use fire magic to end its meaningless life. This time, Evil Eye brought the warrior Gagran from the team to meet the body of the Abyss. The most famous undead magician organization in this world is the infamous Shylanen, but in fact Shylanen is just a subordinate organization of a member of the Abyss Body, and the Abyss Body is the most powerful undead organization in this world. Among them, there are even members who are conducting research on 9th tier magic. Although the Abyss Body can only be considered an excellent cannon fodder for the Great Tomb of Nazarick, it is a rare hero for those above level 30. The Abyss Body is an absolute powerhouse. Now the person Evil Eye wants to meet is the member called the White Saint. It is said that she has entered the realm of 8th level magic 200 years ago, and it is unknown when she will break through to the 9th level magic. Originally, Evil Eye didn't want to come into contact with these undead, but the other party regarded her hometown as their territory, which led to a lot of conflicts when Blue Rose just returned. In the end, the two sides barely reached a tacit understanding, but the unusual movements of the sun for a period of time made the Abyss Body unable to sit still. Some members took advantage of the opportunity at that time and successfully broke through to the realm of 9th level magic. Some members also believe that something really big is about to happen in this world, something that will change the world. As a result, even the body of the Abyss began to increase its contact with the outside world. Among them, Blue Rose, who happened to be staying next to the organization members, naturally became the target of wooing. Finally, after a long negotiation, Evil Eye agreed to join the Abyss Body as a member of its inner circle, assisting in research, being studied, in exchange for the Abyss Body's protection. Chapter 87. Battle Guerrilla Warfare, Human Ranch. The Human Ranch, also known as Demiurge Paradise, is a distinctive building in the Great Tomb of Nazarick and the embodiment of the malice of the NPCs within it towards humans. The effect is roughly +1 to control, providing the special product 2-legged sheep parchment, and gold coins per round. To put it simply, this ranch provides parchment for making magic scrolls in the Big Tomb, but this parchment is made entirely of human skin. In addition, out of economic considerations and pure bad taste, the demons who manage the ranch like to peel off the victim's skin while they are still alive and then heal it with magic. Sometimes they would choose to let other victims skin another victim alive, and then vice versa. Or let the mother skin her own child, or let the couple who truly love skin each other, and whoever skins faster can rest for a day. There are many varieties. Originally, there was a human ranch hidden in a hidden place inside the Holy Kingdom, but with the destruction of the kingdom, Demiurge also opened a number of branches in the kingdom. Although Demiurge is now imprisoned and the Great Tomb of Nazarick has begun to fully shrink its defenses, the human ranches outside are still operating and are working overtime. In Ins's words, the current environment is such that even cat claws have to be borrowed. Although the parchment provided by the human ranches could only be used to make some low-level scrolls, it was better to have it than not. Under Ins's orders, all the human ranches were working at 300% intensity. Even with healing magic, humans kept dying because they couldn't bear it. However, these were no problem for the ranch managing demons. There were plenty of 2-legged sheep in the Holy Kingdom and the Baja's Empire, and there were millions of survivors in the kingdom, so they could just capture them. And today, Batel arrived near a human ranch in the kingdom. From the outside, this human ranch looks like an ordinary small town. It doesn't even have a wall, but is surrounded by a fence. The demon who manages this ranch doesn't care if humans escape. It enjoys hunting down escaped humans and torturing them inhumanely. This ranch is equipped with many units that can move quickly and have flying capabilities, and ordinary humans inside have no chance of escape at all. Moreover, if someone escapes, the punishment is not limited to that person. The guarding demons divide the humans on the ranch into groups of 10. Once someone resists or escapes, the remaining group members will be punished. After playing this a few times, if someone dares to think about escaping, the other humans will immediately inform on them and try their best to stop them. And because it was easy to manage, this place was rated as the most relaxing ranch under Demiurge. But the workload has been too heavy in recent days, and all the demons are working overtime. The dead human corpses will be used as snacks and fed to other humans. Some demons also like to eat them. But now there are too many dead ones, we can't eat them anymore, so we have to throw them away. 5 or 6 little demons were carrying a corpse that was no longer in human form and flying towards a large pit not far away. Batel carefully dodged these 1-foot-long monsters, then easily climbed over the fence and jumped into the pasture. This place looked like an ordinary residence, but Bartel's extraordinary senses told him that some of the blackened ground was covered with human blood, and the air was filled with the smell of human bodies being subjected to various cruel acts. The things hung in rows on bamboo poles to dry are all human skins. In addition, there are also a large number of human bones and human hair products. Bartel, who had been separated from the main force, was unaware that a Primarch had already arrived with a large army. In the past few days, he had been dealing with the 4 knights sent by Uns. Now he had successfully eliminated 2 of them and temporarily got rid of the remaining 2. He discovered this ranch by accident, and at that time Batel felt that something was wrong with this town. Now that he was closer, he was completely convinced that this was the place where the evil aliens persecuted humans. As a space marine and the sword of humanity, he could not just ignore it. Batel used various obstacles to move quickly in the ranch. Although he was tall and not a stealth-savvy space marine like the Raven Guard or the Night Lords, with his extraordinary skills and senses, Batel's sneaking was still faster than that of an ordinary person running. On the way, Batel had already discovered that this damn place was planning to peel off human skins. Although he didn't know what they were going to do with the human skins, since it was done by aliens, it must be an evil act. Batel threw the delayed ignition device he made with earthen materials on the way onto the drying human skin. This thing would probably ignite in 10 minutes. Before that, Batel wanted to destroy this disgusting place as much as possible. Even though all the demons on the ranch were busy working, as Bartel continued to sneak in, he would inevitably encounter them. After all, this ranch looked like a small town, and it was almost impossible to avoid them completely. At this time, Batel would immediately attack and kill the enemies before they could raise the alarm. Finally, Bartel went underground and came to the door of a tightly guarded room. This room is different from the other mortals imprisoned outside. Other rooms are directly on the ground, just like an ordinary residence, and there are only 2 or 3 ordinary demons guarding each room. The door and walls here are all made of metal, and outside the door stand 4 elite demons that are over 3 meters tall, have well-developed muscles, and have goat skeletons as their heads. Now these 4 demons are grabbing a few people and tearing off their skin bit by bit with their claws, competing to see who can tear off the skin more completely. Batel didn't know that this was a scaly demon with a level over 30, but based on his intuition he confirmed that these demons were much stronger than the ordinary demons outside. Batel believed that if he had a power weapon, such as a power scimitar with a decomposition force field, he would be able to kill these 4 demons quietly. If he had a chainsword and a bolter, he could have been killed quickly, but now he only had a mace and a greatsword, and he had lost his power armor. Batel took a deep breath of the air with a heavy smell of blood, feeling the unwillingness and pain of the humans in it. Since becoming a space marine, he has never been reluctant to sacrifice his own life. Having witnessed such atrocities, there is no reason for him to stand idly by. Batel rushed forward. He was obviously running at full speed, his weight was much heavier than that of an ordinary person, and he was carrying a full set of equipment, but the sound he made was no louder than that of an ordinary person walking. Batel used a special running technique. He landed on the forefoot first, then slightly touched the heel, then slightly lifted the thigh to drive the calf, gently lowered and quickly raised. After the foot just touched the ground, he took a quick step. This set of skills is simple to say, but it is difficult for ordinary people to practice to the level of Bartel. Coupled with the screams of several demons, Bartel kept rushing in front of him, and the scaly demon immersed in the bloody game did not react. Batel threw a mace and knocked a scaly demon to the ground. Multiple cracks appeared on the goat's skull. Then, using inertia, he turned around and swung the great sword in his hand to cut another scaly demon in half. At this time, the remaining scaly demons finally reacted. One threw the human in his hand at Bater, and the other hurriedly picked up the big hammer on the ground. Bater slid forward and dodged the unlucky guy who was thrown at him in a posture as if he was about to fall. At the same time, he raised the big sword in his hand and cut off the neck of the fallen demon. Then the scaly demon picked up the sledgehammer and wanted to swing the hammer to hit Bater, but as soon as he picked up the hammer, Bater rushed in front of him and hit his wrist with his left hand. The scaly demon felt numb and the sledgehammer in his hand fell to the ground. Soon after, Bater's great sword arrived, and with a cassock slash, he almost cut the scaly demon in half. At this time, the last scaly demon also picked up his weapon and rushed over. Batel lowered his body, and his feet seemed to be equipped with pulleys, and he slid directly to the other side, and the hammer hit the cut demon hard. It was almost cracked, but this time it really cracked. Batel took advantage of this opportunity to slide directly to the side and rear of the last scaly demon and stabbed it directly in the throat from the waist with a sword. All this happened in just 2 breaths, and the 4 scaly demons were dealt with by Bater, but Bater also consumed a lot of physical strength. He took a deep breath, temporarily reducing the amount of adrenaline that was madly secreting in his body. It is very easy for the demons in the Great Tomb of Nazarick to determine life and death. If the demons begin to disintegrate and disappear, they are truly dead. Batel did kill all 4 demons, and found a key on the ground, which corresponded to the door behind him. It was time to light the fire, and for a moment, the human ranch was in chaos. Batel opened the door, and a bloody smell so strong that it seemed to be dripping from the air hit him in the face. Batel did not rush in but raised his sword as a mirror to observe the situation inside. Sure enough, there were 2 disgusting thin figures rushing towards the door. Batel kicked the door open without hesitation, and the 2 thin figures were knocked several meters away, and they didn't stop until they hit the wall with a crackling sound. The room was about 50 square meters in size. In addition to the 2 that were knocked away, there were 2 other identical monsters in the room. These monsters are humanoid in appearance, about 2 meters tall, but with very long arms, purple blood vessels under their milky white skin, wearing tight black leather aprons and black leather masks tightly on their heads. The room was filled with various torture instruments, and a person was hanging in the middle of the room. The person looked extremely miserable, with her limbs cut off and iron hooks piercing through her severed limbs, hanging her from the ceiling. The skin on his body was stripped off, and a lot of the muscles on his chest were cut away, so you could directly see the beating heart. The lips on the face were gone, and the exposed holes were empty of teeth and tongue. Her eyelids were cut off, not allowing her to close her eyes. But now, those eyes, which were clearly bloodshot and seemed about to burst at any moment, were still filled with an unyielding flame. Chapter 88, The Rescued Paladin of Batel's Guerrilla Warfare. Remedios Castlati, the leader of the Paladins of the Holy Kingdom of Label, the strongest warrior of the Holy Kingdom who has received white, one of the 9 colors of the Holy Kingdom's highest glory, and one of the strongest paladins of mankind. From the perspective of mortals in another world, Remedios is a true genius. She officially entered the realm of heroes at a young age and wields Cephalicia, one of the 4 holy swords. With time, she might be able to enter the realm of abnormal people like Flutter. She even has a beautiful appearance, so her future is limitless. Of course, Remedios is not without flaws. Maybe all the nutrients are absorbed by her muscles. Contrary to Remedios' outstanding combat wisdom, her brain is really not very bright. But this was not a problem for her. Her sister, Quirato Custodio, who is only 2 years younger than her, also entered the realm of heroes very early. She serves as the highest priest of the Holy Kingdom Temple and the head of the priest corps. Unlike Remedios, Quillat not only possesses the fighting power of a hero, but also has the brains that a hero should have. When Quillat is around, Remedios doesn't need to think about anything and just needs to listen to her sister's commands. In addition, the ruler of the Holy Kingdom at that time, Holy Queen Kalka Basaraz, was a truly honest, noble, and wise monarch who cared about the people. She was also a monarch truly worthy of the service of the 2 sisters, and was also their best friend. Remedios had been very happy for the first half of her life, and then everything changed. The demon emperor Jaldabaoth conquered the various demi-human forces that had been hostile to the Holy Kingdom for many years, and then led the demi-human army to invade the Holy Kingdom. The Holy Kingdom suffered heavy losses in just one encounter. The fate of the Holy Princess and her sister Quillat was unknown, and only Remedios managed to escape with a group of people. Remedios, who was originally only responsible for fighting, encountered for the first time a situation where she, as a leader, did not make any decisions. She didn't know what to do and could only seek help everywhere, but she was repeatedly rejected. In the end, only the Sorceress Kingdom responded to her request. The Sorcerer King Nzoulgaun himself also accompanied them alone to support the Holy Kingdom. Remedios had never trusted this undead who had just massacred tens of thousands of the kingdom's soldiers. She intuitively knew that Nz was not a good person and must be plotting something. But he didn't know when his subordinates began to be turned against Byans, and he was isolated without realizing it. But it doesn't matter, as long as the Holy Queen can be rescued, everything will be fine. Remedios's plan was simple. She was to find someone to defeat the demon Emperor Jaldabaoth, rescue her sister who could use 5th tier magic to resurrect the dead, and then find the body of the Holy Queen and have her sister resurrect the Holy Queen. But everything did not develop as he expected. His sister Kuirat had died long ago, and the Saint Queen also died. In the end, Demon Emperor Jaldabaoth was defeated by Sorcerer King Inzoulgaun, and the Holy Kingdom was ruled by the Holy Queen's brother Casbond. Although it was tragic, Remedios could only admit it. But when did a religion that worshipped Inzoulgaun appear? The leader is still his former follower Ningyue. Something was wrong. Although she couldn't tell exactly what was wrong, Remedios's simple brain intuitively felt a strong sense of disharmony. There is something wrong with Inzoulgaun, and there is something wrong with the current Holy King as well. Remedios shouted loudly, hoping to awaken the crowd that had already begun to go crazy, and then she died in an accident in a public place. At least that's what was announced to the public. When facing the assassins sent by the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Remedios herself believed that she was dead. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself locked in a room filled with torture instruments and a strong smell of blood, and her limbs had been sawed off. The demon Emperor Jaldabaoth, who was supposed to be dead, appeared before him again, and the new Holy King Casbond knelt at his feet respectfully. Demon Emperor Jaldabaoth smiled and told Remedios the truth. That absurd and cruel truth. It turns out that my suspicions were right from the beginning, and the truth is even more vicious than my worst thoughts. All the tragedies of the Holy Kingdom were planned by the Sorcerer King Inzoulgaun himself. The real name of the Demon Emperor Jaldabaoth is Demiurge, the class guardian of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. The Demon King who was killed before was just a subordinate summoned by it. As for the Holy Queen's brother Casbond, he had long been replaced by a monster. The Holy Kingdom has now been swallowed up by the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Remedios nearly gnashed her teeth when she learned the truth. Demiurge simply told her with a smile that these truths were a reward for fools like her. Now that she had been buried outside and officially dead, she would not be allowed to die here unless she asked for it. Of course, Demiurge did not say that he would not let Remedios die even if she asked for it. Demiurge's original plan was to get rid of Remedios who was in the way, but killing her directly would have been a waste. In this different world, heroic units above level 30 were extremely rare. Now that he had captured one, he could use her for various experiments. Such thoughts probably accounted for a small part of the discussion, and the main reason was that Demiurge simply wanted to see strong humans suffer and go crazy. The days that followed were torture for Remedios. The torture demons sent by the Great Tomb used all kinds of methods on her in order to make her completely collapse. Remedios persisted. She didn't know how much time had passed. She only knew that she had to pass on the truth, to protect the Holy Kingdom and its people. This was her sister's and the Holy Queen's expectation. Before that, I must not die. Remedios persisted day after day, and her tenacity amazed Demiurge, who then came up with more vicious ideas. Sometimes Remedios would be healed and brought to a beautiful and comfortable room, sometimes even to the dungeon, and then Demiurge would bring some nobles who had already completely surrendered to the Great Tomb. Remedios knew these nobles, but they had already sold their souls to the Great Tomb, and all they had left for Remedios and the others were their filthy desires. No matter how much Remedios begged, they refused to take out any information and were only interested in trampling on the dignity of the Holy Kingdom's once strongest warrior. Further on, there are Remedios' former subordinates, the people she saved, and the game planned by Demiurge becomes more and more vicious. But Remedios survived. She couldn't die before the Holy Kingdom was saved. She didn't dare to die, and today she had waited for a turning point. She saw a sturdy man in a cloak suddenly break into the cell and eliminate all the torture demons like chopping melons and vegetables. Then the strong man with resolute features put her down, but he seemed helpless about her injuries. During this torture, Remedios no longer had any control over her mouth and tongue, so she could only signal with her eyes. The torture demon itself was not of a high level, and could only use some simple healing magic. It was fine for ordinary torture to keep people alive, but the intensity of its magic was too great for Remedios, and Demiurge demanded that Remedios must not be allowed to die. To torture the demon, all they could do was prepare a few more bottles of healing potions. It happened that these potions were all produced by the Karn village under the Great Tomb, so they could be used on Remedios as an experiment. There just happened to be a few bottles of healing potions on a table not far away. Remedios kept signaling Bartle with her eyes to look at the potion on the table. Bartle reacted very quickly and immediately understood what Remedios meant. He picked up the potion and came to Remedios. If it is, move your right eye. If it is not, move your left eye. Do you hear me? Remedios moved her right eye. Is this thing used for healing? Remedios moved her right eye again. Oral. Remedios moved her right eye again, and Bartle understood, so he fed the healing potion to Remedios. The effect was comparable to that of a third-tier magic potion for treating severe injuries. After entering the body, the potion took effect quickly. It couldn't regenerate Remedios's broken limbs, but at least it stabilized her condition a lot. Can I still take this medicine? This time Remedios nodded weakly, and Bartle fed the remaining potion to Remedios. After taking a few bottles of potion, Remedios finally recovered her basic human appearance, with the tongue and teeth. However, her broken limbs could not be regenerated. Obviously, the third-tier magic alone was not enough. Thank you. Remedios said weakly to Bartle, who had saved her. You're welcome. Let's get out of here now. As he spoke, Bartle found a piece of cloth and wrapped Remedios around himself. At this time, the enemies in the ranch also noticed the movement below and rushed out of the room. Chapter 89, Batel's Guerrilla Warfare, Destroying the Ranch. The first to arrive at the basement were a few low-level demons with horns on their heads. They were easily killed by Bartle, and then he and Remedios began to break out. Wait a minute, I know a place. There are a lot of magic scrolls. Bartle didn't know what this magic scroll was, so he asked as he moved, what is that? A tool that can use magic. Remedios was surprised that Bartle didn't even know about the magic scroll, but she still gave an explanation. She is no longer the impatient leader of the paladins. Remedios has now learned to be patient and understands how to make the best use of everything around her. During the time she was imprisoned, Remedios had already realized that this hellhole was where the great tomb of Nazarick was used to peel off human skins and make magic scrolls. Demiurge even took her personally to the place where the scrolls were made, allowing her to see with her own eyes how a baby was made into a magic scroll. If possible, Remedios did not want to use these blasphemous and cruel scrolls, but the most important thing now was to pass on the information. Just like she couldn't be sure whether Bartle was another bad joke from Demiurge, but she had to catch it, she had no more choice. May the Holy Queen's spirit in heaven bless you. Remedios prayed silently in her heart. Remedios then began to show Bartle the way. Several demons appeared along the way to block the way, but their levels were not high and were easily eliminated by Bartle. It seems that the devil in charge here is more worried about the large amount of human skins stored up there than the possibility of Remedios escaping from prison. Batel successfully arrived at the door of a warehouse, where several humanoid creatures with thin bodies but big heads were constantly copying something on human skin paper, and there was also a dead great magician in the innermost. When Bartle broke into the room, these creatures raised their heads together. Dark circles could be seen on their pale faces. Even the bones of the dead great magician looked much whiter. The monster showed a moment of confusion, but how could Bater miss this opportunity? He took 2 big steps to the nearest monster, and with the sword in his hand, he lifted up the big-headed monster and smashed it towards the farthest monster. Then Batel twisted his body and, relying on inertia, chopped off the head of another monster with 1 rotation. At this time, the other monsters also raised their hands to cast spells on Bater. Because they were in a room full of human skin paper, these monsters were very careful when casting spells and did not dare to use magic such as fire, acid, and electric shock. After all, as a summoned creature, if it is killed, it will only lose its own life, but if it accidentally destroys the scroll in the room, it will damage the interests of the great tomb of Nazarick. These monsters were not of high level, the highest level great wizard of the dead was only in his 20s, and now they didn't dare to attack casually. It was easy for Bartle to deal with them. In the blink of an eye, Bartle destroyed all the monsters in the room. Take these scrolls and just think of activating them when you want to use them. A magic scroll is a foolproof magic item that can be used by ordinary people besides magic casters. There are piles of scrolls in this room right now, all of which were made by the monsters in the Great Tomb who worked overtime over the past few days. To facilitate organization, managers can arrange these scrolls into different categories, mark their levels and attributes, and even considerately draw relevant symbols on the outside of the categories. Even if you can't understand Japanese, you can tell what category of scroll it is through the symbols, just like the organization method in the game. Following Remedios' instructions, Bartle found several golden scrolls on the desk of the Great Magician of the Dead. These were the scrolls made of Remedios' skin that Demiurge had shown her. According to Demiurge, a paladin's skin like hers seems to be very suitable for making this kind of faith magic. Coupled with the advancement of the Great Tomb's craftsmanship, the magic scroll made with her skin can produce 4th-tier faith magic. Demiurge also used the scroll on Remedios once, healing her severe injuries, and then began to torture her again. To Demiurge, this was just a small sideshow, but Remedios remembered it deeply, and now she found such a scroll. It was a godsend. The 4th-tier healing magic was able to heal broken limbs. Although there would be great side effects, with limbs she would be able to use scrolls to fight instead of being a complete waste. Bartle used healing magic on her according to Remedios' teachings, and after a burst of golden light, Remedios' limbs began to regenerate. At this time, the management demon above discovered that the connection below was broken, and personally brought people to check. The guarding demon here is a level 40 praying demon. It looks like a nun with folded hands praying, but its skin is as pale as a dead person, its eyes, mouth, and nose are all sewn with thread, and its folded hands are also sewn together with thread. The pleading demon's melee ability is not strong, but it can use special techniques and magic called size, which can cause a large number of debuffs to the enemy and can also apply multiple buffs to its own people. Following them were 8 humanoid demons that looked like a fusion of mantises and humans. Their hands were replaced by huge sickles, which reflected a copper rusty light and were obviously poisoned. These 8 scythe demons are good at close combat. They are only level 20, but they can become very difficult to deal with when they cooperate with the wish demons. However, the scythe demon, who was supposed to surround the wish demon and provide cover and attack at any time, was left behind by the wish demon. This pleading demon was really anxious. It did detect some unusual movements underground, but it initially thought that the scaly demons were playing some extreme games again. The last time they played baseball with humans, the noise was even louder. The pleading demon sent a low-level demon to tell the scale demon to restrain himself. At this time, news came that the human skins that were hung out to dry suddenly caught fire. These were earned by me working overtime and directing my subordinates. If they are all lost, not only will my work be in vain, but my superiors will definitely be angry, and I will definitely be punished terribly. Without giving it much thought, he begged the demons to put out the fire quickly. Halfway through, the lower-ranking demons sent down came back in a panic, reporting that the scaly demons were missing, and Remedios, who was imprisoned deep inside, was also missing. Although the scaly demons usually do all kinds of things to vent their boredom, they will never leave their posts without permission. Now that they have all disappeared, the only possibility is that they have been destroyed by the enemy. Upon hearing the news, the praying demon was horrified. Remedios was imprisoned by Demiurge himself, and it would be in great trouble if it lost Remedios. He rushed down with his men in a hurry and found traces of battle on the ground. Following the traces, he found the magic scroll production room. Although the eyes of the pleading demon were sewn up, it was not a human being and did not rely on its eyes to see. When it rushed into the scroll-making room, it saw Remedios, who was receiving treatment. In the eyes of the pleading demon, this woman not only wanted to run away, but also wanted to steal the scrolls they had worked so hard to make. This was extremely abominable. In a rage, the pleading demon rushed straight towards Remedios, its clasped hands emitting a black light, and its powerful special skill was about to be released, but then it was beheaded by Batel. A mage rushed to the front by himself without being prepared for the strong man next to him. It can be said that his death was very reasonable. Batel didn't know that he had just killed the supervisor of this place. To him, the trouble caused by this hot-headed praying demon was not as big as that caused by the frightened sickle demon following behind. Although the 4th-tier healing magic can regenerate severed limbs, it takes a while to cast and cannot replenish physical strength. After Bartle chopped down the remaining sickle demons like autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, Remedios did not fully recover. But there was no need to be so anxious now. Remedios knew that the person who had just been hacked to death was the supervisor of this place. After a brief discussion with Bartle, they decided to take advantage of the chaos to rescue the humans in the ranch. Bartle also used a scroll of healing magic on himself. In fact, even though the Space Marines had very strong self-healing abilities, he was too badly injured before and there was no way he could recover in such a short time. In the previous battle, Bartle was fighting while enduring severe pain. After using the healing scroll, Batel felt a warm current entering his body. His previous injuries quickly improved. He couldn't help but sigh that this thing was really convenient. If forbidden technology had not been popularized, there would have been a lot less casualties in the war. After Bartle recovered, Remedios' limbs grew back, and now Remedios finally had no missing parts. Bartle tore off a piece of cloth with the fire element logo on the table and handed it to Remedios. Remedios did not hesitate. After all, she had experienced everything during this period of time and no longer cared about this. Just use it as a tablecloth and drape it over your body as a simple piece of clothing. Then Bartle took out the box and began to collect the various scrolls on the table. Remedios was still very weak at this time, but she also tried her best to help. The two men quickly selected the higher-level scrolls and filled 2 large boxes with them, then strung them together with ropes and carried them on Bartel's back. Unfortunately, most of the monsters in the Great Tomb of Nazarick are summoned, and their equipment will not drop when they die. Even if you steal their weapons when they are alive, they will disappear immediately once these monsters die. So until now, Bartel can only use the equipment he got from the Great Tomb of Nazarick, and now he has no way to find equipment for Remedios. In the end, Remedios chose a candlestick as her weapon. As a paladin, she would feel uneasy without a physical weapon in her current situation. Moreover, she was now weak and could use the candlestick as a crutch to help her walk. The candlesticks in this room are all made of metal with a large base, 5 trays for candles, and are about 160 centimeters high. Seeing that Remedios had great difficulty walking with the heavy candlestick, Bartle helped Remedios remove the large base and break off the 4 trays, greatly reducing the weight of the candlestick. As for carrying Remedios on his back to fight again, Bartle had never considered it. He could tell that Remedios was a tenacious warrior, and now that she had gained some mobility, he should respect her. In this way, both sides came outside. When they encountered the demon Bartle, they went straight up to chop people, while Remedios used various magic scrolls to launch attacks. The two came to one house after another, killing the guarding demons, healing the seriously injured humans, and distributing magic scrolls to humans who were still willing to resist. Many of these humans were so frightened that they dared not resist. Bartel didn't care about them. After giving scrolls to the humans in the house who were willing to resist, he immediately took them away and lit a fire. As long as they have not completely given up hope, these people will run out of their survival instinct. As for those who have completely given up on saving themselves, Bartel feels there is no need to care about them. Only when people still think about saving themselves can others save them. The human ranch that lost its leader and powerful units was soon destroyed by Bartle, and the ranch's deputy manager, another great magician of the dead, broadcast a message for help to the Great Tomb of Nazarick. According to past experience, the powerful beings of the Great Tomb of Nazarick who possess the ability to teleport will be able to arrive immediately to suppress the rebellion. However, this time its superior only told it that it should work harder, stop complaining about the environment, and think more about its own problems. The great magician of the dead is going mad. Is it now a matter of complaining? The management was killed. The entire human ranch is now in chaos and it is simply beyond its control. However, after it sent a request for help in a more urgent and humble tone, it was only replied with "You should be ashamed." After that, its superiors never accepted any contact from it again. This great magician of the dead did not know that, like some humans in this human ranch, they had been abandoned by their superiors in the Great Tomb of Nazarick, who had also been frightened away. Soon the great magician of the dead was killed. He was not killed by Bartle, but was defeated by the humans he had looked down upon before, using the magic scrolls that were previously planned to be sent to the Great Tomb of Nazarick. Although most of these people were civilians before and were not skilled in using magic scrolls, no more than half out of 10 could successfully cast a spell, and they did not know how to dodge, so the great magician of the dead could kill a large number of people with just one fireball. But as soon as they killed 10 people, 20 more would rush over. For these humans who had been tortured day and night, this might be their only chance. The worst that could happen was death. After several rounds, the great magician of the dead was still knocked down by the magic scroll. The panicked crowd, not sure whether he was dead or not, cast several spells on him, one of which even injured other people by mistake. Bartel, who was fighting on the other side, heard that a powerful enemy had appeared here. When he rushed over, he found that the battle was already over. Bartel then integrated the surviving humans, took away the remaining scrolls and a few things that could be used as weapons, and set the entire human ranch on fire. Chapter 90. The Military Strength of the Human Empire. M30.890. June 6, 11. Early morning. Governor Jim and Bishop John walked on the ruins of the former church area. Governor Jim enthusiastically introduced to Bishop John the various forces of the human empire that were busy working. The current Bishop John has replaced the priest robes he has worn for more than 10 years with a new red robe and top hat. This outfit has the logo designed by the Primarch Lorgar himself. It was a vertical one with a skull on the top, symbolizing purity. There were several rays extending from the side of the skull, like the sun's rays. Lorgar believed that the new world needed a new faith, so he directly announced the establishment of the Empire's state religion and declared himself the Pope, worshipping the great God Emperor. Naturally, some forces were dissatisfied with this action, but the inexplicable warp demons in the previous melee and the miracles displayed by the Emperor himself dealt a huge blow to the believers of the Imperial truth. In addition, since Lorgar was the only Primarch here and no one of equal status could restrain him, this resolution was passed. Now John has been chosen as the Cillian world. Yes, this world was officially named the Cillian world by Lorgar after the name of the Cillian theocracy. Now John is the bishop of the state religion of the Cillian world. However, as a bishop, he is not much better than a commander without troops. First, the imperial state religion has not yet started to officially preach, and second, with Pope Lugia around, who would listen to him? John, who suddenly found himself with nothing to do, pulled Governor Jim, who also had nothing to do, and asked him to introduce to him the various forces of the Empire. Governor Jim, with whom he had forged a deep friendship during the previous war, readily agreed. Although the military of the human empire suffered heavy losses in the previous melee, and now has to allocate a large part of its forces to guard outside the portal to prevent the Eldar and the Necrons from causing trouble, the force that has officially entered this world is still considerable. Now, the most common thing seen in this former church area is the mortal auxiliary army equipped with various equipment. These people, like those you have seen before, are the Empire's mortal auxiliary forces, or the Imperial Army. It feels like there are a lot of differences. The Empire has millions of worlds. There is nothing missing from them. It's normal for there to be some differences. A million worlds? Like you said before, a world is a planet. We have one world here. Does the Empire have millions of worlds? Of course. The Empire is the most powerful force in the galaxy. It's hard to imagine. Bishop John tried hard to imagine, but still couldn't figure out what such an empire should be like. 3 huge tanks that looked like battle fortresses drove past him, attracting his attention. He pointed at the tanks and asked, "Is this also a tank? But it's different from what I saw before. It feels much bigger. This is the most famous super heavy tank of the Empire. It is called the Emperor's Bane Blade. Its armor can withstand attacks from all kinds of alien artillery fire, and its artillery can destroy the aliens' heavily armored units in one fell swoop. These big babies are the favorite friends of the Imperial Army. If I had 3 Emperor's Bane Blades, perhaps more people would have survived." Bishop John expressed his admiration. He had seen the power of the Imperial tank, and since this Emperor's Bane Blade was so much bigger and Jim praised it so much, it must be a very, very powerful unit. "I just don't know what this battle will be like. Maybe even the genius captain of the Black Festival can't deal with one." Further ahead, John saw 2 chariots that looked like land warships, accompanied by a group of black armored space warriors. Governor Jim saw the winged sword logo on it and quickly pulled John aside to make way for the chariots. At the same time, he gave the standard Sky Eagle salute to the troops, and John followed suit. The leader of the black armored warriors sitting on the chariot also returned a salute to John and Jim, and then after they left, Jim said to John, "See? The winged sword emblems on their bodies mean they are the Dark Angels, the glorious First Legion of the Imperial Space Marines. The 2 chariots just now are the super-powerful armored personnel carriers used by the Space Marines. It is said that their armor is thicker than many tanks, and their firepower is more powerful than many tanks. They are called Mastodon assault vehicles. Which one is more powerful, this Mastodon assault vehicle or the Emperor's Bane Blade super heavy tank?" Jim was stunned for a moment, then said angrily, "How should I know? I'm just the governor of a remote planet. I'm lucky I can call out his name. And how could you think of starting a fight between the Empire's armies? That's not right, don't you know?" Okay, I was wrong, let's keep going." John quickly gave in, and Jim calmed down. A group of Space Marines wearing red armor, but only a few dozen of them, followed in vehicles. The Dark Angels also came over. The logo on their bodies was a golden Ouroboros biting its own tail. "This is the Thousand Suns, a Space Marine from the 15th Legion. I don't know the details." The 2 continued walking and saw the Titan Legion officially set out after being reorganized, accompanied by a large number of guards. The largest warlord-class titan sounded a huge horn, and with that, the titan troops began to march. Their footsteps made the earth tremble, and the excessive radiation from the accompanying crusaders made the air smell like ionization. Jim quickly pulled John to the side. It was not a good thing to be approached by these crusaders. Small flying insects with high radiation levels would die if they got close to them. There was no telling how long it would take to clean up the radiation afterwards. See those big guys? However, although the radiation from the Skitarii is troublesome, the Titans are the pride of the human empire. John nodded vigorously. He had seen these Titans before. After all, they were so big that it was hard not to notice them. These are the most powerful land weapons of the human empire. They are Titan legions. One of them can easily destroy an alien city fortress. John nodded vigorously. He believed it too much. That thing looked like it could destroy the world, let alone the city. He would believe it even if someone told him it could. The two continued to move forward and soon saw the word-bearers who were building a statue of the emperor. This time, the word-bearers' mothership came directly, and tens of thousands of the most elite word-bearers came directly. Although half of them are now on the other side as guards, the density of word-bearers here is also very high. The word-bearers were incredibly efficient in constructing the statue of the emperor. In just one day, a statue of the emperor more than 6 meters high was erected in the original square. John stared at the statue of the emperor in fascination. The carving craftsmanship of the word-bearers is extremely high, and the details of the Lord of Mankind can be said to be very clear. The emperor presented in this statue is a heroic middle-aged man with an Asian face. There is a sun-like halo behind his head. It is unknown what kind of pigment the word-bearers used. In the sun, this halo shines with dazzling golden light, which is quite sacred. John sincerely performed the Sky Eagle salute to the statue of the emperor and prayed silently in his heart. Lord of humans from another world, may you bless us mortals.